Probably turn my mic on. Probably helps. Welcome everybody. It is, I forgot to check before so it would look smooth, August 13th, 2023. This is the Sunday show where you can call in and talk to us about God, spirituality. We'd love to know your reasons for believing in God, having a religion, believing in ghosts, believing in something supernatural. I'd take certain cryptid calls, but others I wouldn't care that much about. We want to hear what you believe and why. And give us a call. I am Jimmy Snow, and I am joined today, as always, by the illustrious Matt Dillahunty. Matt, hello. How are you?
Illustrious just means shiny. Like, is there too much light on my head? Is it beaming at you there?
I meant beacon on the hill, illustrious.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Did you like the...
Thank you, Ronald Reagan.
Because I asked you a little bit ago, I was like, what is that verse you always quote? And I forgot to tell you why I was using it. And I was like, earlier I was in the shower, and I was thinking about... And I said to myself, like, man, if I had any balls, I'd start the show with a scripture. That would be the first thing you'd see on the show. And my reaction in the past has been, if I feel that way, like if I actually had the balls to do this, my reaction, I've learned then you should do it. And so that's what I did today.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's one of many, and it might be worth it to look up a number of different verses about essentially the Great Commission. Go ye therefore into all the world, preaching the gospel, these sorts of things. By the way, somebody in chat just said they made a limerick, and I liked it so much, I'm going to read that limerick and give credit to Monster and Head.
Hell yeah.
So here I was, hoping to see a theist prove God to me. I waited so long, they got it all wrong by showing their faith to be evidence-free.
That's really good.
I liked it. Very well done there, Monster and Head.
That follows, I can tell just by how it flowed, that follows rules of limerick writing that I don't actually know. But it had such good rhythm and yeah, the whole thing just went together super well. That was great.
Well, it's the first two and the final line all rhyme, and then the middle two. So there once was a man from Nantucket.
Yeah. I knew somebody was going to point it out, and it's already happened. No jacket today. Jimmy's just wearing a t-shirt. I usually put the jacket on a couple minutes before the show starts, especially lately when it's warm. However, Matt and I have both been playing Baldur's Gate, and our discussion of it, I literally at 2:00 went, oh shit, we got to do a show, and interrupted the
my fault
convo we were. Oh man, that game is my whole identity.
Slightly different experiences, and I've only made it about, I'm going to say, 3 or 4 minutes into the game. And one of the things that irritated me, I'll just say this, because I don't think it's going to spoil anybody's game experience or anything else. One of the first actual lines of dialogue in the game, once you get just outside of the intro, or the first intro area, I guess, I don't know how many intro areas there are. The character walks up to the water and says, fresh water. There's a settlement nearby. No, the fact that fresh water exists does not mean that a settlement is nearby follows from that. It's horrible. And yet, and Art and I were talking about it. It would have been so easy to fix this because the character I was playing was a druid. So maybe they're getting a message from the birds or whatever else, or maybe you can tell there's a settlement nearby because the water's not fresh because it's been polluted by this or whatever. But no, they just did a dumb line.
I see. I am having the time of my life with that game, to the point that I'll be thinking about it a lot. If ever it seems like I've drifted off into oblivion, I'm probably thinking about my next character. or how cool it would be to play Oblivion with the same game engine.
I was going to say, you're playing Oblivion again?
Yeah, I legitimately, if they're going to make us wait 15 years for a sequel to Skyrim, they could do us a favor and start republishing the old games in the newer engines. Just spruce them up. That would be beautiful. And it's funny because this game, all right, no one wants to hear us talk that much about games. Yeah. The last thing I've got is this game comes out as the game that I feel like is the greatest game to come out in years and probably since Skyrim for me. Meanwhile, next month, Starfield comes out, which also has that kind of level of potential for me. Potential anyway, because Starfield's just described as Skyrim in space, basically. And so to have them side by side, I almost wish it would have been spaced out a little more, except for that we're waiting on Starfield just so they'll finish the Elder Scrolls game. So anyway,
I'm just waiting on Counter-Strike 2, but
I get it. I'll jump in. I've not really been a Counter-Strike person, so I'll probably just annoy you because you were professional at it, but
Oh, I suck now. So, I'm annoyed all the time, mostly at myself.
There we go. The number is down below, 720-619-2288. There is also a web link in the description if you want to call VoIP, if you want to call from your internet connection, whether that means you're out of the country or it's just more convenient for you, or you feel that it's more anonymous if you feel that way, though some people have abused that. We once again had this last week a caller who has been banned from the show call in and try to just change the voice they were using. This time, just going with a very muffled voice the whole time. But then they started making the same points, and I recognized again, and that's the thing that they can't resist, making the same terrible points.
It's a weird thing because I've been really good at recognizing voiceover work from famous people. As a matter of fact, I got one of them evidently wrong. Going back and listening to it, it now does not sound like it, but I even changed the IMDb entry for something because I was convinced I was right and they didn't have any way to check for errors. And so it just stuck. But for whatever reason, maybe it's because we're coming up on 20 years of live call-in shows. There are people who are repeat callers who, even knowing they're a repeat caller and knowing their name, I don't remember what the last conversation was. I don't remember how it went. And this is not I don't give a fuck about you. It's just too much. I can't retain 20 years of conversations. I'm lucky to remember what the hell I had for breakfast this morning.
Yeah. But I also would say that when you do this job, there's almost a mental health thing you have to do, which is leave the show on the show. Because to tell you the truth, I've gone to Aron's show after the show and somebody has been like, so what happened with the call with so-and-so? And I have to ask, tell me what happened. Remind me about that call. There's almost a thing you have to do to keep yourself sane where, you leave the show on the show. I remember some things sometimes from people and you get enough repeat callers, you're going to remember, but for the sake of my sanity, I wouldn't even try to remember better. Anyway, we'll get started with calls here. I wish I had brought my shortcut pad up here. That was a silly thing to forget. But we'll start by talking to Bill in New York. Bill in New York, I've connected the line and there's immediately a ton of sound coming in. So if you can, okay, it seems like you fixed it. Bill in New York, you are on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Hey, Jimmy and Matt, how are you doing today?
Just fine. How are you?
I'm all right.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, no, I had for both of you. I deconverted about 4 years ago with partly your help, Matt. But I still have a hard time getting over the fear of hell, and I don't know why. I mean, I was raised Southern Baptist, so that might be one thing. And I went to a parochial school where, of course, that was hammered into your head. And I know, you guys came from the background like where hell was preached. So how did you get over it?
I'll let you go first. You had a more typical hell in the Baptist church.
Well, no, the fire and the brimstone, and you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you put that behind you?
In my case, I don't think I ever really had that much of a fear of hell because I walked down the aisle at 5, and so I never really thought that I was going to hell from 5 years old on. But for me, it was a lot about how many other hells am I afraid of? Why am I only afraid of this particular version of hell? And when I realized I wasn't spending any time worrying about other religions' heavens or hells, or even other versions of Christianity's heavens or hell, and that there was nothing I could do about it, it just vanished. Like I never suffered truly from a fear of hell in the first place, so it was really easy for me to just kind of scrub it.
Yeah. So, Bill, when people deconstruct from a religion, especially one that has hell in it, when you still have leftover fears that are contrary to your actual updated beliefs, there's something psychologically not happening. It means that there is somehow psychologically the fact that you fully don't believe. And rarely have I gotten this question from somebody who, when you actually just talk about their beliefs, they're like, yeah, I actually worry it might still be true. It's usually a separated fear of hell from the fact that they absolutely don't believe in hell. So there's an emotional conditioning that you probably grew up with that's in there and it's locked in that isn't actually connected to your status of belief or disbelief when this sort of thing happens. And so generally you want to connect the two if you want to lose them. And this is why I've recommended to people things like cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's even a specific practice you can do where when you feel that fear of hell, you basically force yourself to connect the two. You go, I'm feeling afraid of hell right now, but I don't believe hell exists. So I'm feeling afraid of hell because I was taught this about hell and you sort of go until you're so tired of talking about it to yourself that you just don't want to anymore. And the more you do it, the quicker that exercise becomes to the point that sometimes you'll feel that little twinge of fear of hell. And then the exercise is like, why did I feel that? I don't believe in hell. If you're wanting an exercise to go over the psychological stuff. As far as my personal relationship with getting over the fear of hell, Mormons don't have a very typical hell situation. And in Mormonism, pretty much everybody, even everybody who like leaves the church and stuff, once you die, you still have chances to fix everything. And so if you go as a non-believer or unbaptized, you end up in what's called spirit prison, where missionaries are going to be preaching to you until somebody gets baptized on your behalf. That's what the baptisms for the dead are. And the only way to really go to hell.
Oh man, that's wild, Jimmy.
Yeah, it's crazy stuff. The only way to go to hell, which is just total separation and isolation in consciousness forever in Mormonism, is to basically say, I'm rejecting your redemption, God. I don't want it. I don't want it. You almost have to choose. Now, there's some other stuff about past Mormon doctrine that changes it. That said, it didn't prevent me from having angst over consequences of being wrong. And that's more the stuff that and if anything, like the way my dad would always project things like, well, when we get to the other side, even though you keep winning the arguments, even though you have the better points in the conversation, which he would literally acknowledge at times, but that he can't defend that he's right, but he knows that when we die and when I die, he's going to basically be there smiling at me on the other side, trying his hardest not to say, I told you so. I've lost the argument, but I'll win the spiritual war, is the kind of shit that he would suggest and do. And so that sort of thing is to now when he says something like that, it's just like being told Santa is going to do something to me as well. And I think if he realized the amount of eye-rolling cringiness it was met with, if he could feel what I feel when he says it, that it is genuinely like a pathetic, pitying thing in response, I bet you if he felt it once, he'd never say it again, because he'd realize, it's almost like oh, sweet summer child, you still believe this sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's that. I mean, that's like I said, that's strange. Well, Matt knows more about the Baptist version of hell and all that. You just if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to burn forever. That type of thing. Yeah. And I've gotten mostly over it, but every once in a while it'll pop into my head, and I'm kind of, well, why? I don't really believe this, but I guess it's just the years of indoctrination.
Yeah, Bill,
That's what's probably so damaging to children, you know?
I grew up eating almost exclusively peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and Totino's pizza. And when I'm having a particularly bad day, those are the foods I crave, right? Because there's an attachment to it. I mean, I'll defend peanut butter and jelly, but Totino's pizza isn't good, and yet I really like them. They're terrible, and yet I want them. And so it's the things that are conditioning.
They're like cardboard.
Yeah. And so the things in which sometimes I'll use a Totino's pizza as basically the crust of a pizza that I build on top. I'll put new sauce and cheese and toppings on top of the existing thing and cook that. Anyway, it's not actually about, you don't fear hell. You're having an emotional response that you're conditioned to have. In the same way that you can listen to some religious music, and if it's religious music that you used to feel very inspired by, some people are intimidated by that. In fact, there was an atheist YouTuber, I'm not going to say their name, who, they weren't on the scene very long, so no one would remember who they were anyway, but who years ago came and tried to bully their way onto everybody's channel, literally talk shit about, how come you won't let me come on your channel to interview you? So why won't I give you my platform to do my least favorite thing, which is interview me about me? We complain about that kind of shit, and then basically got rejected across the board of like, no, build your own platform. Nobody's going to just build it for you. Some people tried to be nice and do things. And then one day releases this long Facebook post about how, she had been, I'm going to say with they had been, I was trying to keep anonymity. Now I've eliminated some possibilities. They had been in the atheist world and heard all the arguments and learned all about it. But then a song that they remembered from church came on, and they felt something they hadn't felt in a long time, which was the love of Jesus Christ saying to come back. And it was the feelings and that's the way to not fucking react to it, to go, oh, I'm having a feeling that I was brainwashed and conditioned into having, that was a pun. If any, no, it doesn't matter. But anyway, into having, and now I'm feeling it again. So that must be God. That must be Jesus coming back to talk to me. If you're acknowledging you're having the feelings and going, this is a leftover vestige of garbage, I don't think you should be too intimidated by the fear of it. But work on it still. Right. If you're feeling it and going, this might actually be the way God communicates by making me want to pee my pants every now and then fuck that God.
Yeah, no, like I said, I've pretty much gotten over it, but every once in a while it pops up. Yeah. And, then there's the also part of being a skeptic is asking a question of, well, what if I am wrong?
Sure.
Sure.
But has any scientist ever been made wrong because something from made to realize they were wrong because something they were conditioned against in their childhood made them feel funny? Or is it because they found out why they are wrong? They did further investigation. Having angst about being wrong is great. Worrying about being wrong is foundational to skepticism in a lot of ways.
Right.
Effective skepticism, I guess. So yeah, I don't know, man. I get it. You don't want to have that feeling anymore. So there's some suggestions on how you want to work on it, but I wouldn't be too hard on yourself either.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Jimmy. I mean, I kind of understand exactly where you were going with that as far as the cognitive stuff. That's just garbage that's been there or was conditioned there. I'm 66, and sometimes it just pops up, and I don't know why. It's not like I'm thinking about it, or just I might be listening to something or looking at something. But anyway, well, I don't want to take too much of your time, so thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Sure. It pops up because that's its purpose.
Yeah.
You were conditioned and indoctrinated, and it pops up for the same reason that the Schoolhouse Rock songs pop into my head all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, from that period too. I was around 12 when I got baptized, and then, but yeah, all songs from that era pop up too so. All right. Well, thank you guys very much.
All right. Good to talk to you, Bill.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Yeah, not an uncommon question to come up. By the way, that's probably one of the more predictable questions when you, because I think it goes to show, because we talk about the need for shows like these and stuff, and the thing that I was talking to somebody the other day how I get kind of annoyed with the people who were like, well, I used to consume all of that stuff, and now that I don't and I'm past that phase, I have contempt for that stuff and now we'll shit talk it. So I recognize that it actually is useful for people in a specific phase, but if I'm no longer in that phase, that must mean it's actually not useful. That kind of shit drives me crazy, but it does.
Yeah,
it goes to show. What's that?
Is the whole notion of looking at things as a phase. Me not believing in God anymore isn't a phase. I'm also an ex-smoker, and a number of, like, I smoked for many years. I smoked throughout the whole time I was in the Navy, including like 4 packs a day during the Gulf War. But that was mostly about cigarettes being cheap, and I'd light a cigarette, put it in the ashtray next to me, and be so busy doing stuff, I'd forget that I had a cigarette lit, and I'd light a second one, and then look at it. I mean, but when I quit smoking, there's a couple of different paths you can take. And some of the most vehemently anti-smoker, just self-righteous, smug pieces of shit are the ones who are former smokers. And they're the ones, they just get worse. In my case, when I quit smoking, sorry, I still liked the smell of cigarettes. If I dated someone who was a smoker, it was very tempting. And, you know, I probably had 1 or 2 cigarettes over the last 30 years just because I was dating or hanging out with somebody who was smoking. It's like, oh, I'll just have one. And then as soon as I have it and my lungs start, you know, to fall over. And then I remember how much it made my clothing stink and my house stink and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I don't need that. And that's just the process of me being a quitter. But I don't run around, you know, talking shit about other smokers. And yet there are many who do. Similarly, when people find their way to religion, they often land in a number of different camps. And sometimes there's a lot of anger. I know the reputation and everything. I didn't have a lot of anger. I was mad at, you know, my parents for maybe a minute. Then I realized they were victims of the same sort of indoctrination that they had subjected me to, and that they were just trying to do what they thought was best based on what they understood to be right.
Yeah.
And so now there's no reason to be mad at them. And so I try to turn that to, let me be mad at the preachers. But they're under the same position, and in many cases even worse. Once you understand, like, the reason behind the Clergy Project, which is an online anonymous forum for active and former members of the clergy who no longer believe, to talk to each other. Once you understand that, you understand that the preacher who's up there in the pulpit, that's his job. And the job means, even if you have your doubts, even if you stop believing, even if you don't believe this at all, you have to preach that sermon, because when your congregation no longer feels that you're giving the message that they think they need to hear, you're out. And now you're out of a job. And because you spent 10 years preaching the gospel, what is your skill set?
Yeah.
What job are you qualified for? I've been doing nothing but atheist activism and atheist education for the past 10 years. Prior to that, I had jobs as software engineers, software lead engineers, QA engineers, things like that. I'm now at a point where I can't go back to what I used to do before. I can't put out a resume that is, you know, 8 years in the Navy, then, I don't know, IPC computer, then Dell computer, then, you know, smart, or list off the various software companies I went to, and then 10 years of what? Content creator. I got to find something to put in there that's not only not offensive. I remember losing one job because I was an atheist activist, but now I'd have to also not just have to explain what I was doing, but I don't have the skill set to do the software QA the same way I did before. The world has changed. Yeah, it's changed in the last 20 years. But
yeah. Who'd have thunk? All right, we'll talk to Kaina in Oahu. Hello, Kaina. How are you?
Hi, Jimmy. Hi, Matt.
Hello, hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
All right. I know there's a lot
Pretty
going
good.
on over in your part of the world right now. I mean, not on Oahu, over on, I think Maui maybe is
Maui?
the one that was on fire.
Yeah, there were wildfires that are still actually trying to be contained, mostly impacting the town of Lahaina, which is one of the oldest towns in Hawaii. It used to be the capital of the Hawaiian Kingdom. There are confirmed now over I think 80 people that are dead.
Oh my.
Thousands are missing. I have a friend whose mother is a she's a coroner on Kauai, but she's had to help out on Maui, and she's saying that the death toll by the end, because there's still a lot of people that are missing, is probably going to be over 1,000. It's
We'll hope she's
probably the
wrong and
worst.
wait to see what happens. Cause yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah. Just to take a moment, if anybody can, give aid or anything like that, please reach out to local organizations. And if you're planning on, coming to Hawaii for the time being, please don't, because our hospitals, our fire, our aid responders aren't equipped to deal with this, especially on an outer island like Maui. And so, any tourism at the time is not really going to be helpful.
Sure. Yeah.
But to
Resources
get on
are
the-
occupied for sure.
Yeah, I don't want to make this too dark of a
No.
too
It's all
dark of
good.
a show.
It's all good. Yeah.
Uh,
Go ahead with the topic
the-
you called
the-
in for.
Yes, the topic that I had wanted to talk about, and it sort of ties into the show that Matt had on Wednesday with Forrest about trying to sort of inspire people. And if I start to rant or anything, feel free to interrupt me, because I have a tendency to do that. And it's sort of a wide topic that I'm trying to condense. And so something that I'm thinking about in terms of like QAnon or vaccine, conspiracy, when you ask these people why they're doing it, like the reasons behind it, and a lot of it comes down to the role that they take, that they are, they're fighting against the man. They're in the role where they know what's really right, and they really got the inside scoop on what's really happening. And that mindset is what sort of allows them to be taken advantage of by conspiracy theorists or things like this. And so that sort of role, trying to think about how we can sort of inspire as atheists or left-leaning people, however you would want to put it, as a sort of counter role. Like, Forrest talked about like the scientist, and how everyone can be a scientist if you're just like studying, a science. And so how to make sort of that inspiring role. You know what I mean?
Hot.
I think I know what you mean. I'm not sure what you're asking though.
Yeah.
I'm sort of asking, what do you think would be a good counter role to the sort of populist against the man role that so much of conservative ideology, MAGA ideology, however you want to put it, what is the sort of counter role that we can inspire among atheists or left-leaning people?
So if the motivation for conspiracy theory thinking is let's stick it to the man, what's the counter to that?
Yeah. Is it yeah, sort of that's sort of the question. Yeah, like, and this sort of came about because when there's a school in Hawaii called Kamehameha Schools, and it's named after the chief that united the islands, and it was founded by his great granddaughter, and it's for Hawaiian people with Hawaiian ancestry. You have to show that you have a Hawaiian genealogy as part of the will of the school. And when you interview, a lot of people interview as children, as kindergartners, and before you go into the interview, you can tell the kid, hey, don't do this, don't do that, you should smile, you should do this. But and the kid might listen, but if you tell that kid, be Mr. Aloha, be Mr. Everyone, be Mr. Wonderful, they have an idea of, okay, I'm not only just following rules, I am fulfilling a role, I am playing a character, and how that sort of fills in a lot of the other gaps. And so I know this is like a really like esoteric, like wide-reaching question, but if you guys had any sort of thoughts.
Well, so basically you're asking, hey, what's our best thought on how to combat conspiracy theorist thinking? And I'm doing it. I'm already doing my best thought, which is to constantly stand up and make people defend how and why what they believe, and point out logical fallacies. The thing is, the truth is probably not going to be as sexy as a conspiracy theory. It's if you feel, letting them know, like, for example, if somebody, I don't ever get people telling me that their job is or that they're a conspiracy theorist because they want to stick it to the man. But if somebody were saying that, then I'd point out exactly how what they're doing is helping the man, how we live in a world where like a handful of people have more wealth than everybody else combined. And where the votes that they're casting are voting against their own interest in helping billionaires and corporations, and that politicians are going to say whatever they feel like to pander to them to get their votes to be in positions of power. And that doesn't make it a conspiracy where it's us versus them, because unlike many other places on the planet, we have a participatory system where you can run for office, where you are part of it. There's not a single elected official in the United States that isn't, on some level, just like one of us or replaceable by one of us. Yes, some of them come from the proof that Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene are elected representatives in the country. All those years that we told people, you can do it, you can be anything you want. And we thought it was just a lie. We thought it was just, hey, it's encouragement, because if we got 5 kids here, we don't know which one could actually be president. But, if we encourage all of them, maybe one of them will be president. Maybe that was a terrible fucking idea. And now we have people in elected positions representing the rest of us who are too stupid to have that much power. It is a matter of getting people to recognize, hang on, what do I actually value? Because if what they're saying is they value not supporting the government over people, then look at their votes and show what their votes have done compared to whether or not they're supporting the status quo or, but a lot of them have particular values. Like my parents and some other people I know, they're almost single issue voters. If there's 2 candidates and one of them's opposed to abortion and the other one's not, the one that's opposed to abortion is the one that's getting their vote. And that's how we lost the Supreme Court in Roe v. Wade. They're single-minded. They will put up with anything and everything, including being poor, being broke, having to move every 5 years, having to sell houses at a loss every time, having to work 2 or 3 jobs. They'll do all of that because they have this single-minded goal. The people who value truth don't tend to have that same sort of motivation. They don't tend to have that same sort of, like, I'll do anything I can to stand up for what I understand is right. But when push comes to shove, hang on, somebody in chat just said, Matt still doesn't get that the people with money largely control the people with their hands on the levers of power.
Yeah, Matt doesn't get that.
You genuinely think I don't get that after what I just said.
I was just going to say the same thing, Matt. Jesus. If only you'd learned that people such a stupid
Here's a thought. Why don't you call in and tell me some more about what I don't understand? But anyway, I don't know
Jesus.
a better answer than that, Connie.
I almost wondered, were you also asking, like, is it incumbent upon us to find people who are inspiring and basically platform people that we hope will become sort of messages of basically heroes to look up to, so people will try to emulate those heroes and become a skeptic as a result? Was that kind of what you were asking?
I think that does sort of fall in line with what I was sort of thinking. Thank you for the response, by the way, Matt. That was great.
I think in response to that concept, that one's a tough one for me because it's one of those ones that I recognize the utility of. I recognize that that's what a lot of people are voting on. I recognize that, but I personally dislike that side of a lot of things. Like, I'm a socialist. I like Hassan. I like Vosh. They're two very big creators. I don't like that there are a number of people who are socialists who, because they like those creators, not because they actually know a goddamn thing about economic systems or what the implications are, but because they like being on that, in that group, and they like those two specific individuals. I'm not saying that's everybody who likes them. Again, I like them. That's not why I don't watch actually either of their content anymore, but that's not why I politically align that way. And so I actually, the whole like taking advantage of the concept of hero worship and stuff is such a religious concept to me that I'm actually pretty off put by it. But I also understand, like I was talking to somebody earlier this week, that kind of shit is also what wins the presidency. And so right now we've had these new revelations, or not new revelations, but this escalation of the Hunter Biden investigation now has an official special prosecutor counsel and special counsel, and just the knowledge of the way that will play, not to somebody like me, not to somebody like Matt, but the people who are frankly stupid and actually still are swing voters, which most swing voters are kind of stupid. The people who are the independents that might sway one way or another, the people who aren't actually going to investigate it, the people who were actually, their vote was actually affected when James Comey years ago came out and said, we've reopened the Hillary email thing. And arguably that may have been what swung the election, considering that was also around the same time as grab 'em by the pussy happened. Those people, unfortunately, react better to a person and a personality. And so I recognize that with the kind of shit they're going to be able to do, I feel that it is obvious to me that it is selfish for Joe Biden to stay in the race at this point, that he should make up an excuse and they should put Gavin Newsom in, because Gavin Newsom is an attractive man who is extremely good on a debate stage and would make Donald Trump look like a joke and would not win because he has the better ideas, because I don't support Gavin Newsom for president as far as if I was picking the president, but I recognize the easiest way to not get Donald Trump again, in my opinion anyway, is to put him up against him and not redo Biden versus Trump. Again, a lot of that political opinion, to sort of expound upon the concept of figuring out the heroes to get people to come over to because they so much admire and want to emulate them, makes me feel gross and dirty, despite the fact that I recognize its utility and unfortunately its importance in things like politics.
I understand that, like, that does, like, you know, we don't want to make, you know, like myth of the people that we're trying to put up, because then that's also unfair to them, because it holds them to like in a mentally high standard that they're never going to be able to, you know, sort of follow. And sort of tie that in with what Matt's response, that like making the truth sexy, because if the right or conservatives or MAGA or however you want to, if they're willing to stoop to the level of hero worship and things like that, and it's gotten this far in terms of the country where a three-time indicted or a three-time what you call president indicted now is still running, still up in the polls, and so
by the way, relying too much on that is how you get Donald Trump. Donald Trump is these people's fucking hero.
That's true.
And so I get it. We have to have the counter to all of that, which is why I think you put up someone like Newsom.
I find myself genuinely confused. So I'm 54, and for most of my early life, I was completely apolitical, partly because I couldn't vote. Then at 18, I went in the Navy, and for a while, most of the time I was in for like 8 years, and I was, non-political at the beginning, but a Rush Limbaugh diddlehead towards the end. And even now, looking back, I could understand how reasonable people could both see a similar vision for what a better world looks like and disagree on the path to get there. And so they could say, hey, we need less government spending. We need more government spending. We need, less government handouts. We need more government handouts. And I think, but all that comes down to kind of economic issues. And I feel like that we did so well in the 90s.
Yeah.
And moving forward after that people were like, oh, we're going to finally give a shit about people over profit. And so we're going to start making people and people's rights the issues. And so we start moving forward on same-sex marriage and LGBTQ rights and other things like that. And what ends up happening is you get a couple of issues that become someone's most important issue, and everything else gets laid by the wayside for that issue. And the thing is, it can easily make sense. I mean, my partner's trans. What happens with trans rights impacts our ability to stay alive, to stay together, to, all of those things. It's not just like, oh, we're going to have less money. It's we're going to have fewer rights. And it is difficult for me, for years early on in my atheist activism, it was, I'm waking up every day in a world where the majority of people believe something that I don't, but I used to. And I realize it's going to take time to change that. But now I wake up every day in a world where people actively believe stupid, obvious lies and are backing up behind a cult of personality where the personality itself is vile and disgusting. A lying, insurrection spawning, pussy grabbing piece of garbage. And people are backing, somebody's seen people are backing like Andrew Tate. And I just watched somebody post a video of Andrew Tate bragging about how, about the violence that he was threatening to use towards, a woman tells me they're not going to cry. Well, that's a challenge. You might as well challenge me to fight. I don't even have to fuck you. I can leave my penis in my pants and just make you cry by beating the shit out of you. And I'm like, how on earth is this individual who's been charged with sex trafficking still being defended by the same assholes that are trying to defend Donald Trump, the insurrection inspirer in chief, and more? I don't know what else to do. We've been doing this for a while. We have open lines right now for people to call in, and by all means call in about religion, ghosts, gods, goblins, whatever you want to call in on. But I don't know what to do other than what we've been doing. And some of it clearly doesn't work. And so how do you make people value the truth more than the Kardashians? I don't know.
Yeah. And I think that's just like the eternal question of like, how do we get people to go more towards truth and less away from what makes them just feel good in the moment? Yeah, another thing, if I have some time, I know you guys, I don't know what the time is like, if I've gone too long or anything.
Go ahead.
And it sort of ties in with that same thought about narratives and roles, is that in Hawaii, the traditional religion in Hawaii has it's not a direct translation from God, but it's Akua, and Akua are they're elements, they're trees, they're the islands and everything, and the reason why they matter is because everyone in Hawaii, if you follow the genealogy chants, you can trace your lineage to whatever this Akua, this god, which means this is how you're connected to that. And for humanity, for the Hawaiian people, the understanding was we come from the union between the Earth Mother, Papa, and the Sky Father, Wakea, and that relationship, understanding that literal, like, familial relationship. The Earth is literally your mother. I think that does play a large part in the Hawaiian understanding of why you need to take care of the land. It's not just because you live on the land and it allows you to live. It's because that's literally your mother, and or not literally, because Hawaiians knew we had good sex, but there's that familiar relationship, and so how that sort of narrative can be used for environmental purposes.
So are you suggesting that it might be better to keep certain religions or religious narratives, or keep people believing in things which aren't at their core true, if it can serve some greater truths? Like, if we could convince people to adopt some, I hit the wrong shortcut. I'm using my phone right now as the thing. If we could convince people, but you all should go to Patreon for sure. If you could convince people to believe in some form of Christianity that would promote taking care of the earth and countering climate change, are you suggesting that would be a better alternative to trying to convince people to counteract climate change on the basis of truth, if the emotional response to the religious side would be more quick or effective? And by the way, I'm not saying this as a dig. I'm asking you because I can't imagine being comfortable in a world where that is the truth, but I acknowledge that we kind of live in that world in some ways, like with the political examples I gave earlier. Sorry, are you suggesting that maybe we hold on to religions for the people that we can control better by having them?
No, I appreciate the clarification. I'm trying to, like, how do we substitute, or maybe not substitute, or like find that sort of, how can we achieve that same sort of emotional connection through the truth, through skepticism or science, through a truth-based understanding?
Gotcha.
In the same way that religions or ideologies will prey upon that, the familial emotional relationship.
So clearly the changes have to happen at the foundations of those things, that it has to be in some way related to primary education and stuff, because right now, so far, the most effective way I have seen to turn a person very skeptical is to lie to them so much that at some point they have a crisis in their life where they can't live with anything even resembling a lie anymore. And that's why it would seem the largest percentage of the what you might call skeptic community are ex-religious people. And it would be very disappointing if that was the only effective way to make skeptics out of people. But right now, we have a world filled with people who aren't just lied to every day, but somewhat ask to be lied to every day, participate in systems and reward systems which lie to them every day, whether that's monetarily or through their viewership, through ad revenue. And so we have to work on right now both the people who are currently skeptical or non-skeptical, anti-skeptical, as well as try to figure out a way to have a future that is also that skepticism is much more popular for people who are being born now. And what the perfect solution for the foundation stuff is, I couldn't tell you. I just know that we're, as Matt, I think, said at the beginning of the call, we're trying to here participate in the changing the people's minds who have been lied to part. I don't really know what to do about the foundations besides obviously better, like cliches, better education, higher focus on STEM fields, better explanations of what fucking words mean. Yeah. That's the best I got for you there.
Yeah, I appreciate your thoughts.
Totally. All right. Is that everything we got from you?
Yeah.
You just broke out. Say that again.
Oh no, I say that was pretty much all I had. I didn't have anything else to think about. I appreciate you guys' thoughts.
Awesome. Hey, when somebody hears you're from Hawaii and they then say like, awesome, well, aloha, is that cringy or is it appreciated? I always wonder when I see newscasters do it.
I appreciate it just because it's like it's just sort of it's a human, hey, here's a connection in my brain. Hawaii, aloha,
sure.
Aloha. Yeah.
Cool. I just wanted clarification before I also became a cringy. It's been happening on the news all the time. And I was like, I don't know whether this is considered appreciated or kind of cringy that it's being forced. So I appreciate the clarification, Kaina, and aloha.
Aloha. Ahuiho.
Thanks.
There's a country song that's gained some popularity over the last, I don't know, week or so.
The Aldine one?
No. That's the Try That in a Small Town. This is one by Oliver Anthony called Rich Men North of Richmond. And so for those who aren't familiar, Washington, D.C. is north of Richmond. And so it's a song about these rich politicians. And the opening verse of this song is a working man's kind of anthem. I'm going to read through the lyrics because I want to specifically address how I think this applies to the last call. And so the first verse is, I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay. So I can sit out here and waste my life, drag back home and drown my troubles away. Now, you got a working man's anthem here where, hey, we're getting the work done. We're not getting paid well enough. We're breaking our back. We're doing all this and, wasting our life and trying to drown our troubles. Cool. And then it goes, it's a damn shame that the world's gotten to for people like me and people like you. So, okay, now we've built a connection. Wish I could just wake up and it not be true, but it is. Oh, it is. All right. So now we've got a working man's anthem and a connection between them and me driving around in my pickup. This guy knows what I'm going through. And the next verse is living in the new world with an old soul. Great line. These rich men north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. And this is where my brain goes, hang on, this could be a great point, or it could be traveling down the road of conspiracy theorism and hate. Because we have elected representatives, and a good chunk of them are people like you and me who may not be there specifically for control. Some of them want to do good, even if what they think is doing good isn't necessarily in agreement with what you do. But so these, Lord knows, they just want to have total control. Want to know what you think, want to know what you do, and they don't think you know, but I know that you do because your dollar ain't shit and it's taxed to no end because of rich men north of Richmond. All right, so we're paying too much in taxes, despite the fact that maybe we're not. Then the next line is, or the next two segments here is where the song completely loses me and loses any semblance of being tied to a humanistic view on fighting corruption in government or inequality or wealth inequality, income inequality. And it's a prime example of what these rich men north of Richmond want this guy to do. Because it says, I wish politicians would look out for minors, miners, and not just minors, minors, on an island somewhere. Lord, we got folks in the street ain't got nothing to eat, and the obese milking welfare. Well, God, if you're 5'3" and you're 300 pounds, taxes ought not pay for your bags of fudge rounds. Young men are putting themselves 6 feet in the ground because all this damn country does is keep on kicking them down. I'm not going to finish with the rest of it. It just kind of repeats. What's happened here is this individual who is writing a song about real issues has bought into the narrative that instead of hating or standing in opposition to the extreme wealthy, and the individuals who are truly manipulating the system, that he should be mad at someone who's 5'3", 300 pounds, and managed to get fudge rounds on welfare, as if that person is living the high life at all. It may be the case that some of your tax dollars has gone to buy an irresponsible, lazy person something that they don't deserve. It may also be the case that it's gone to help people find some little bit of health or happiness, even if you don't necessarily approve of it. It's like the people who say, oh, why would I give money to this person out here on the street? They're just going to use it for drugs or booze. Fine. I was just going to use it for drugs or booze. It was extra money. It wasn't money I needed to pay my rent. Why not let them have some of the pleasure too? But the bigger problem here is that this is written like an old school country song, and I'm sure this guy means well, but they've convinced him that the people he needs to hate are the other people who are worse off than him.
Yeah.
This is what's wrong with the country. This is what's wrong with our system right now.
The people who are arguably the biggest victims of the rich men, not just north of Richmond, but also south of it. I just think it's really funny. I don't know how anybody on any side can unironically think, maybe he means anybody in DC who works there. But literally, if I just think of a person who's definitely there for power, not much longer, mind you, but it's Mitch McConnell, who lives south of Richmond. And then the way the lifetime appointments have and stuff. This is a person who's acting like he cares about the corruption that money might bring into politics. But I just have a feeling he feels fine with all of the revelations of how much Clarence Thomas is banking from his billionaire friends. I'm sure that doesn't bother him, but Nancy Pelosi trading stocks probably does bother him. Where I can hold that both of those people are corrupt if they are trading stocks with insider information and getting rewards from billionaires. It's what a fucking world. And I think let's do some announcements before we jump onto calls. We've got calls that are queuing up, but hey, we've asked you a couple of questions in the in polls in the chat so far. A couple were, do you believe in God? Some of you said yes, and we would like to hear from you. Call us and tell us why you believe in God. What in the modern era makes you look out into the universe and go, I think it was a guy. I think a guy did this. Not literally like that. We want to hear your reasons. We want to hear why you believe and perhaps why we should believe. And if your reasons are good, I'll start believing today. Also asked you whether or not you believe in ghosts, and that got a much higher answer. So not only would I love to hear from a theist who believes in ghosts, if you are an atheist who believes in ghosts and you are a person who fancies yourself a skeptic on top of all of that, I would love to hear what your reasoning would be. And then lastly, and this is a little bit off topic of usually what the day of the show is. However, over on my channel, Jimmy Snow, which eventually I'll start putting links in the description too, as we're going to be doing it more. But over on my channel, Jimmy Snow, probably starting this week, there will be call-in shows, starting with just 'Cause I Wannas. And then we will be launching, I don't want to commit to a date yet, because I think I've already decided to change it to a committed date, basically 1 year before the election. But to more politically themed shows, including call-in, though, well, obviously, I obviously will always take religious calls over there too, if people like. However, the most recent poll asking you, and 600 of you have responded so far, 615, whether you will be voting for Donald Trump in 2024. 7% of you have, so what is that? About 42 of you, now 44 with the additional votes beyond 600, have said yes. And if you wanted to call in and tell us why, I would take that call, even though this is the Sunday show, because this week has been such a mind fuck for me. And the fact that his support is still growing when I feel the corruption is extremely obvious. But I've thought the corruption was obvious since before he started running. So maybe you can school me and tell me how you can take a person who is so antithetical to the party he claims to represent, and that you would still vote for him in 2024. Upon what reasoning you would do that? Go on.
I've posted some chat stuff to you right here in vMix instead of where I normally would. I threw that in because there were some calls. We've got calls that are being screened right now, and some other people, but there's some other calls that I saw pop up that I thought we were going to get, but they've disconnected.
Yeah.
One of them was a two-part call. There's nothing to address in the second part because it was a personal question, but the first part was, why not agnosticism? And I like the calls that are like, why aren't you an agnostic instead of an atheist, as if the two are mutually exclusive. And so if you have questions like that, yeah, over the years we've done a bunch of kind of like atheism 101 things, but for me, and I also see a lot more people lately using agnostic, which I have a number of issues with. If it's backed up by this principle of theological non-cognitivism that was Massimo Pigliucci and others were advocating, I think that's a non-starter. For those who aren't aware, theological non-cognitivism, I've done videos on before, basically saying that the God concept is so devoid of anything that it's impossible to have any sort of position on it. And I think that that's simply false, based on the fact that billions of people are convinced in some sort of theism. And so the fact that they don't all agree on one sort of theism may mean that universal theism is cognitively void, but not theism as each individual might define it. And similarly, I'm an atheist because I don't believe that a God exists. And then I am also an agnostic, depending on definitions of knowledge and other things. So some of these are going to be fun questions to go through, kind of like explaining the terms and how we use them. And by the way, Jimmy and Art aren't going to agree on everything and every term, or I'm not even sure if we agree on Gavin Newsom or not. Although I'm certainly not opposed. And at this point, even though I will bitch about single issue voters and other things, right now, if Trump's the Republican nominee, I'm voting for whoever's not Trump, because I already know enough. I mean, I can imagine a scenario where the other side in a bizarro world could put up somebody worse than Trump, in which case I'm not sure what I would do. I would vote for the better of the two options, I guess, just like I've been telling everybody to do forever.
My main position on is simply that Biden is becoming too toxic. You and I will both vote for Biden if that's who the election is. So I'm not talking about who I want to be on the ticket, because I don't even want Newsom on the ticket. It's I think that Newsom is the most in the short term we have to make the change, to go through the political drama that would be dropping Biden. However, it's not that hard considering his approval ratings are also dog shit. I also don't have the confidence that everybody else. I don't think that they have proven a thing. The expansion of the special counsel, if you can just sell to the American people, to these swing people, that Biden had so much as Starbucks bought for him out of the profits that his son made on the sketchy deals, that's going to fuck up the whole thing too. The threshold for, again, the email thing was so significant last time. So my only position is, I don't think Biden is the person to put up against Trump. And if in the short term, the one that makes the most obvious sense is a hot, charismatic man that follows the model from before and who is an exceptional debater. And that's Gavin Newsom. Again,
I think
not
moving
who I would
forward, you should
president.
stop referring to Gavin Newsom as hot.
That's an important part of the point.
I think it is a bad move because it sounds like you like him because you got a crush on him.
I don't like him. That's the problem.
I'm telling you what it sounds like.
I get it.
When one of the things when we're talking about who's going to be president of the United States, and one of the first things you list every time you mention them is that they're hot. I can't even tell you what Gavin Newsom looks like. I genuinely couldn't pick him out of a lineup.
Matthew McConaughey
probably
is what he looks like.
But in any case, when you're like, oh, he's hot. Okay, cool. I could not possibly care less about that. And I think it diminishes the subject, but
I think if I had more of a platform,
it's going to convince people to vote, but they're voting for bad reasons.
No, I agree. I completely agree. As far as the bad reasons, I'm saying we right now have an electorate of people who there are two people you have to get to vote. Either the people who decide, I hate this election so much, so I'm not going to vote, which makes you a selfish asshole, or the people who are always the swing voters, who are these least common denominator stupid people who actually making a good case based on facts do not matter at all. And so basically I am trying to say, not because I want to smash Gavin, that the fact that he hits the appealing marks that are shallow, because remember, I'm also saying he would win in debates, but you know me, I think what debate is turned into is a fucking joke. I don't think debates are won based on who has the better case to be made. I think they're won based on who's the better debater. Literally. And that's it. That's why I don't think scientists should debate politicians, for example, recently. And so it is the fact that we have to appeal to the least common denominator people that, if I'm picking somebody for president and I get to choose the president, it would be somebody much further left than Gavin Newsom. That's for sure.
All of my preferred picks are evidently unelectable.
I mean, I'd like it to be AOC just to piss off the other side. She's good and left, not as far left as I am, but the catharsis of what a defeat that would be to their side. Like we thought we would feel when Hillary wins, where, I wasn't enthusiastic about Hillary, but I was excited for what I thought was going to be a 20-year Fox News campaign to fail. And then it didn't. It didn't fail. Anyway, we should continue on with calls. Let's talk.
And weirdly, it's like all political day, evidently today, or at least so far, theists,
priority,
as people have sussed out in chat. If there was a theist, they will always have priority. If you're a theist, if you're somebody out there who went to church today, want to talk about what you came up with in church, cool. If you believe in a God and you think you have a good reason for it, cool. We understand you're calling into the most difficult gauntlet you're likely to face in defense of your beliefs. And we're willing to make some rather large concessions on time and interest and things like that, just so that you can make your case. But I get it. If you're afraid that you're not able to defend your God belief, that's cool. If you don't feel that you have some duty, despite what 1 Peter 3:15 and Mark 16 say and other things like that, that's fine. Maybe you're not a Christian. Maybe you're a Muslim or a Scientologist or a Jain or a Hindu, and you're like, why would I call in and talk to these people? And I get that the biggest reason is you either suspect through some conspiracy theory that we're not honest or that you won't be treated fairly. That's just, I get it. If you want to sit around on your Sunday and enjoy life and not call in to defend why you believe in God, that's fine. I'm sure whatever God you believe in will be proud of you for failing utterly to demonstrate any good reason to believe in any of this religious nonsense.
I'm kind of waiting for this call that's currently in screening to finish its screening, because that's the one I want. I want a piece. I want a bite.
Oh yeah.
Hey, awesome calls showing up on the line this week, because just to give a little bit of time for that call to queue, to queue up. There are some other calls that would just take too long for me to get through. I'd just be thinking of the other one. Tomorrow on Skeptalk will be Forrest Valkai and Gutsick Gibbon are back, the dream duo. On this Tuesday, I've been seeing a lot of hype. People are very excited for this upcoming episode of Dying Out Loud featuring Footless Joe. Will be joining Dave Warnock. I think that's going to be a great show, but maybe I'm biased because Footless Joe is one of my best friends. The hang up this week will be Matt Dillahunty. And have we confirmed the Wednesday slot, or are we still waiting for confirmation from that guest?
So we've confirmed that we're still adjusting time because he's only available for like from 6:30 to 8:30. And so the question is, do I start the show at 6, do 30 minutes and then have him on, or do we start the show maybe at 7 and just do 90 minutes with him and I'll do the super chats afterwards? Or because I have to get on a plane very early the next morning, there is a non-zero chance that we will not have a show this Wednesday and we will just move him to a show where the schedule works out better for him. We're not sure yet, but I'd like to do a show because I love doing the shows.
Yeah. I suspect, just knowing me and my obsessiveness, that there will be a show on Wednesday, but it might not be the hang up. It's more, might end up on a Cause I Won or whatever. And then this Thursday, Katy Montgomerie and Dr. Ben will be holding down the transatlantic call-in show. It's going to be a good week of great shows. I like all those. Still has not finished, but it looks like it's coming to a close. I'm excited. If you'll let me hit the, at least the YouTube points, and then, well, it's becoming shorter. We'll tag team the political and, the theistic points. I haven't been this excited for a call in a long time. Someone said, "Hey, Jimmy, Gavin just emailed me. You want me to tell him anything?" If you think that those reply to a political email will get to him, tell him to go further left. Did you hear that? Well, it sounds like you don't. I do follow him a little bit in places. He and Ron DeSantis are going to have, independent from the presidential debate, will be debating each other soon. And I'm actually very much looking forward to that event. I might just steal it out of the screening room. I'm just going to, I'll give Zoe, by the way, thank you very much for being our screener today. Very, very much appreciate you being here and holding us down. Ooh. I'm just gonna message. Put Fred through. Bum.
See,
I'm excited. You got any other announcements?
Nothing that's relevant to that. Well, I will say that I need to tell you something, which is there's someone who decided to come after me on Twitter, some unknown random person who suggested that they used to be a fan of mine until I abandoned Logic. And this was in response to me calling out the governor of Texas for treating immigrants as if they were props and playthings and shipping them all over to sanctuary towns, because he, like others, cares more about profit, politics, and being a prick than about actually helping people. He's a fucking monster. And so this person said they used to be a fan of mine until I abandoned Logic. And I was like, well, apply for a debate. So they've evidently applied to come on End Boss. And I haven't had a chance to look at it because we haven't done it. By the way, we're still doing this. There have been a lot of things happen, including some issues with my health that have kept me from digging in on Inboss stuff. But yes, there's somebody new in Inboss, which I haven't looked at yet. You might have, who's evidently desperate to show that I've abandoned Logic, although they didn't tell me what topic they wanted to debate. So I'm intensely curious.
My debate topic is, has Matt Dillahunty abandoned Logic?
There we go. I'm in favor.
We'll do it. All right. I've been ready for you. Fred in Northern Ireland, a theist and a Trump supporter, would like to talk to us. Fred, go ahead and say hello, and then I've already got some questions for you.
Well, good day there. It's not to be on the show. I'm going to be honest. I didn't exactly expect to get this far. How are you? Just to ask.
Just fine. And actually, I want to address what you just said. You didn't expect to get this far. So would you like to recant one of the points that you made when you initially did your self-screening, where you said that you believe Matt and I do not want to hear anything besides our own points, that we don't want to hear the truth, that we want to avoid it because, and this was you had cited it as our live chat being subscriber only, something which anyone can do for free and get in there, that you believe we're basically in an echo chamber. Now that you are on the line and able to tell us this truth that you think we're hiding from, are you ready to recant that statement?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, sure. In my opinion, I mean, I'm just not so big on the subscriber thing. I mean, if you want to do it now, looking back on it, I'm going to be honest, I thought subscribing, see, I'm not too good at the YouTube, but I thought subscribing cost money. I didn't know it was free. I'm very sorry for that. I understand now because you'd have like a lot of people trying to come in and be rude. I didn't know about that.
This isn't a real call.
I don't believe this is a real call for a second.
Yeah. Fred from Northern Ireland, who sounds like they're struggling to do a Mississippi accent, is this is Fred. This is a troll call, right? This is a prank.
It is not. It is not.
Okay.
Where are you from, Fred?
Well, I originally came from Texas, but I moved to Northern Ireland to get closer to my relatives.
All right. It's just, there's a lot about this call so far that, so you're on YouTube, you found a call-in show, you didn't know hitting the subscribe button is free.
I thought subscribing meant that it cost money. As in, I knew there was a subscribe button. You know, I have subscribed to many other accounts, but I thought subscribing meant further subscription, like to what do you call it? That thing with the what do you call that? You get extra content on it.
Okay, I no longer give a fuck about the subscribe.
Yeah,
get to whatever point it is, because I genuinely don't believe this is a real call for a second.
Yeah, so let's have you defend your second point, Fred, which was, why do Matt and Jimmy hate theists?
Yeah, that's my general question. It's just, I find that, why would someone hate God? Because he put you on this earth.
Fred,
he gave you a tongue to spread the gospel.
Fred,
yes.
Genuinely.
What makes you think Matt or I hate theists or God?
Well, it just seems like this thing, it's kind of going against God. Do you know what I mean? I mean, in my opinion,
that's not the question. What makes you think Matt or I hate theists or hate God? Which we have broadcasted that we don't believe in God. So either you think we hate a God we do secretly believe in and are lying about, or we hate a God we don't believe in. If you'd like, you could start by picking which one of those things you think is true.
Look, there's no such thing as believing in God. It's either having a relationship or not having a relationship with him. Because
No, sir, Fred. First of all, there is a proposition, some God exists. Any person either believes that claim or they don't believe that claim. You have accused us of believing a claim while claiming we don't, or something along those lines, and also hating this God that we don't believe. I don't know which God you're talking about. First of all, you'd have to define God as to which God you're talking about. And there seem to be, I would guess, plenty of gods that you don't believe in. And so unless you believe in all the gods, your own state of belief is a refutation of the very simplistic religion 101 mistake you just made. So let's start this again. Are you saying that we hate, why do you think that we hate theists or a God at all?
Well, I think that, also, I'm sorry for getting off on the wrong foot. I've been really heated. It's been a difficult day. But
I don't need any explanation. I just need answers to the question. I'm doing a show here. The more time you waste explaining things, the less I'm going to believe you.
All right, sorry. It's just, I find that if you're refuting the word of God, that means that you are hating him. That is what I'm claiming. That is what is true in my opinion.
What word of God are we refuting, and how can you demonstrate that it's the word of God?
Well, I can demonstrate it because it's in the Bible. Because
Okay, no,
in the Bible,
I'm sorry, Fred.
yeah,
How can you
that's fine.
demonstrate? How do you demonstrate that the Bible is the Word of God?
Well, it says many times that the Bible, the Bible has the Word of God. It has the gospel.
Fred, you are so completely full of shit, and it's embarrassing that you are completely full of shit, and it's embarrassing that you thought we wouldn't catch that. But it's also embarrassing that you decided to come in and pretend to be a believer, offering up the stupidest and most vapid arguments with no real thought for discussion, and you did it by challenging, saying, "Oh, there's no way you guys will take this call." The two people who've been taking calls from all comers for ages. It is embarrassing to me that you put on a fake accent, presented fake points, and are genuinely too dishonest to engage in any conversation at all. And the fact that you're sitting there quietly letting me talk is how I know you don't actually believe anything you say, you lying piece of shit. Goodbye.
Whoa, hey, you better watch it, mister. That's a very rude comment. You know that?
I believe he became a turn of the century boxing promoter there at the end.
Yes. Are you going to come at me, you pugilist? I'm ready for you.
I'll have you. We're going to have words, eh? Amir in Birmingham, UK, pronouncing it the way I know you folk, you Brummies prefer, as opposed to Birmingham as we have here in the US. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Can you both hear me okay?
I hear you great.
Yeah. Thanks for waiting through that, by the way.
No, my pleasure. And yeah, I mean, in the first instance, I just wanted to say that I'm absolutely thrilled to be on the station and simultaneously very excited and nervous to be talking to yourself, Matt, directly.
You'll get over it.
Yeah,
it'll pass.
Yeah, I mean, just maybe diving straight into it, I wanted to present a case as to why I feel atheism is irrational. And hopefully I can summarize it in a couple of minutes. And feel free to interject at any point if there's anything that needs clarifying. But
Amir, before you get started, and I won't make you defend it yet because I know that you're mostly about to defend more of a deistic concept. I want to know whether we're talking to a pure deist or a person who uses a deistic defense as the foundation for a different religion. So if you can just indulge me, Amir, after you get past, let's say we agreed that you are right and atheism is irrational and we get to the same deistic position, have you gone beyond that to a different religious proposition? Is your deism foundational to your Christian theism, for example, or are you Muslim? Is there a proposition that you've since found most?
Yeah, worth clarifying then. So I believe in God, but I don't fall under any religious denomination.
Okay. So you don't believe in the resurrection of Jesus or anything?
No.
What about a personal God? Is this a God that you communicate with through listening, who has a personal care about you individually or humanity as a whole? Any characteristics you mind sharing?
Partially. As in, I don't believe there can be direct communication with God, but I do believe that he cares and loves us.
Okay.
Maybe that part there becomes a little bit nuanced.
Yeah. Let's hear your mathematical defense. It says irrational based on a mathematical model and law of averages of your what's I think going to be a proposition of deism, and then we'll talk about the jump from deism on.
Okay, sounds good. I mean, I inevitably just wanted to make a point about intelligence, in that I feel it is difficult to have a healthy dialogue about a belief in God or discussions about atheism without accounting for intelligence and expertise in debating. And what I mean by that is, you're both excellent debaters and you're just great ambassadors of atheism. And if I were to debate God with either of you head to head, then I know I'm going to be up for a losing battle. In fact, I'm going to get obliterated. And with respect,
the flattery is nice. It's not helping at all. Just to the argument, I assure you, Amir, I already like you plenty because you have one of my favorite accents.
Thank you. I mean, this is actually pivotal to the point though that I'm about to make. And, with respect, I can admit I'm not as intelligent or well-versed on these topics as yourselves.
I really need you to get to the case.
Just go for it.
And I'm sorry, I'm just getting to it now. So, just with that point, and this is at the crux of it, there are many intelligent people who believe in God representing different faiths. So I'm sure could go head to head with you guys on all of these topics and make compelling cases. And we have to be honest in the same way that I was and say that some of these, just if I can finish the point, and then I will let you see whatever you want to disband to. But just, some of these individuals are also more intelligent than yourself. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they are right, but they are more intelligent nonetheless. So when we recognize there are more intelligent people than ourselves who exist, who represent different viewpoints and have thoroughly delved into the topic of God and remain convinced of his existence, then surely we have to remain open-minded to the fact that we could just be wrong.
Not on the basis of there being more intelligent people, on the basis of there being better information.
First of all,
how do you decide on what is
no. You don't get to say that you don't even get to suggest that we're not open-minded to the possibility that we're wrong. We are both absolutely, constantly open to the possibility that we are wrong. That's what skepticism is. So if your case is we should be open to the possibility that we're wrong, congratulations, you caught up to me for the last 20 years. I'm always open-minded to the possibility that I'm wrong.
Okay. Maybe then that exists more on a spectrum in what I mean, in that you are convinced that there is no compelling evidence for God, which is why you maintain atheism. However, when there are other people who are completely convinced in the existence of God and however, many different manifestations that
it's irrelevant. Armin, it is irrelevant. Amir, sorry. It is irrelevant whether or not more people are convinced or whether or not they are generally more smarter or more smarter in some area. You said that there are plenty of people or that there are people who are very smart who would present a very compelling case for God. I don't think that's true. I've watched all of the available best defenders of God, including some incredibly smart people, and none of them have presented a compelling case. So this notion that you have that there's a bunch of smart people who believe in God, we already recognize that's irrelevant because there are also a bunch of smart people who don't believe in God. Should we then have everybody take an IQ test and say whoever gets the highest score, their position on God is correct? No, we all know that's flawed.
No, that would be silly. I mean, wouldn't it therefore entail that agnosticism would be therefore the best?
Amir, you gotta let Matt finish.
Amir, once again, agnosticism and atheism are not mutually exclusive. I'm an agnostic atheist, depending on your definitions of knowledge. It's like you've never even looked into this stuff because you're suggesting that we're closed to the idea that we could be wrong when we're not. You're suggesting that we aren't consistent with agnostic views when we fucking are. It's like, have you ever paid any attention to anything that we've said before you decide to come in and suggest that you know what it is we think?
Okay. Can I just, to that point, if I was to just give an analogy, like, imagine if you were back in school and imagine that nerd.
Actually, Amir, I think no, you can't give an analogy because
I want to hear it.
It actually, okay, never mind. I'm going to let you, but I will tell you, it annoys me, and it's probably a character flaw of mine, when I am capable of grasping a concept and then a person offers a metaphor for a concept I've already grasped. We haven't missed the concept. So to provide a metaphor is to say, I think you're too stupid. So now I need to explain to you this in terms of if teddy bears were trying to find honey or whatever the analogy is going to be. But Matt wants to hear the analogy.
I'm sorry if I came a lot. I'm trying to approach it in a different way because look, at the end of the day, all of us, and some of us have taken a lot more time to delve into the topic, but we've all been exposed to the same information. And very intelligent people on both sides of the spectrum have arrived at different conclusions. And so what I'm trying to do is underpin the mechanism as to how highly intelligent people can arrive at different conclusions. And first, that dialogue there is what I'm trying to explore in a bit more detail.
Sure.
Which is
Yeah, and that's
why,
a fucking useless. That is a fucking useless waste of time, because now you're talking about why people disagree. Here's the thing, Amir: is there good evidence for any God?
I believe so, and I can present a case.
Cool.
Let's do that.
If you want
Give me the best piece of evidence for God. But before you do that, since you got me primed to listen to it, what the fuck were you going to say when you said, "Imagine you're back in school"?
Okay, just to finish that. So, imagine that nerd in your class who excelled at all metrics of intelligence, always got straight A's, was super quick-witted, etc. And imagine a scenario where the teacher has given you homework and you've answered a bunch of questions. And before you go to submit the homework, you glance over at what the nerd has produced and you know that he's answered a couple of questions differently. Would your confidence be shattered in that scenario, even if you were confident at the time of answering them?
It's a terrible metaphor.
So the questions that you learn and take quizzes on in school, is one of the questions, is belief in God reasonable? Because that's a very different sort of question than what's 2 + 2.
Yeah, the problem I had with your question, Amir, is in many of those classes, I'm not trying to brag, I was the smart person that people were consulting and trying to get tutored by, but I believed in Mormonism. So somehow these kids understood, ask Jimmy about math and science, but don't ask him about God, because he sucks on that topic. Amir.
And I was in the same boat.
Yeah, Amir, can we agree that Mormonism is obviously untrue?
Yes.
Does it shake your belief in what you just said confidently when I reveal to you this is 100% a fact, that the prophet, the president of Mormonism, is a renowned heart surgeon?
Yeah.
And yet you still feel very confident Mormonism isn't true, right? Or did that shake your claim that it's not true?
I mean, look, if I came across...
Please answer the question. Please answer my question.
He's not going to.
Sorry, what was the question? Just direct. One more time.
Does it change your confidence in your position that Mormonism is obviously untrue when you found out that the president is a renowned heart surgeon?
Yeah.
It did change your confidence? You became less confident?
No, it didn't. No.
Okay, exactly. So now we can put the intelligence thing aside because they aren't relevant. Just because somebody who is smart holds a really stupid thing to be true doesn't affect whether or not you should be confident that it's true or untrue. So we can put that to bed.
I feel like the analogy could be maybe slightly adjusted, but okay, we can...
Maybe foundationally. Let's go with your best evidence like Matt asked you for. Let's do that.
Okay. I think I'm a big kind of advocate of the contingency argument, in that I believe that there's one aspect of reality that is just a brute fact and cannot be explained by anything else, otherwise we end up in some infinite regression. And I believe that brute fact, that thing that underlies everything, is something that needs to have intentionality, and something with intentionality can best be explained by, a creator type figure, something that... Because when we talk about space and time, matter and energy, I think the origins of space, time, matter and energy cannot be contained within itself. It needs to be contained beyond that. So something that then becomes timeless and immaterial. And I think that is, with intentionality, can then be defined as a god.
Amir.
But again, I know the rebuttal that's going to...
No, you don't know the rebuttal. I tell you what, I'm gonna. If you want, I will type up my rebuttal, the first sentence of my rebuttal, and I will give you 30 seconds to say as many sentences as you want. And if any of them matches the sentence of my rebuttal, I'll give you $100. You still think you know what my fucking rebuttal is?
I could expect what it might be.
Let's do it.
All right, here we go. Hang on, let me
give him a second to write it up.
I need to resign this chess game that I was playing while you were blabbering on about contingency. But here, let me jot down my thing.
We should have a game sometime.
I think Katie still has to play Matt and chess at some point too.
Yep. Okay, I have my sentence. Sentence, go.
1400 elo, I'll get separated. I'm thinking that your statement might be along the lines of why invoke something more to explain the brute facts of reality, that would be God? Why can't it just be sufficiently explained within naturalism itself? Why have to invoke something beyond that? Along those lines, possibly.
Nope.
Okay.
The sentence that I wrote down, is this: you didn't present evidence, you just said what you found compelling. I asked if there was evidence for God, and you said yes. And then you didn't present any evidence. You presented a philosophical argument tied to contingency with about 10 different things in there that you did not expound on and did not provide any evidence for.
I can't provide evidence in the sense of scientific, because that's the whole point about God. It's not a scientific view.
Then the answer should have been no, there's not good evidence for God.
But then you are then stating that the only form of valid evidence is scientific evidence, and now I would refuse that.
I'm not. You are. I'm not. You are. I didn't mention scientific evidence. You decided when I said that you didn't provide evidence, you said I can't provide scientific evidence, and that was you declaring what you should consider to be good evidence. I was willing to accept any evidence, but it needs to be sufficient to demonstrate that belief is warranted. I didn't say scientific, you did.
Okay, then I apologize for that misunderstanding. I assumed that you were seeking something scientific there.
Amir, I have two things for you. Amir, I've got two things for you quickly. One, it sounded like, I could be wrong, but that foundational to the thing you found compelling began with a concept of infinite regression, which is, it's fine that you didn't know this, because I didn't know this until recently. There is nothing in physics that actually makes infinite regression impossible, it turns out. We just had a physicist on who explained this to all of us. Dr. Aron Ra, if you want to go back and take a look at it. Secondly, the next thing is a question. Would you like to withdraw a word that you used in your screening, and maybe it was misheard, but you specifically said atheism is irrational based on a mathematical model and law of averages, but are also now acknowledging that you do not have evidence to refute an atheist position. Therefore, I don't know how you could use the word irrational there.
Irrational in the sense that, and that was the point about the intelligence that we was talking about, and then taking a law of averages. Very similar to the fact that, these quiz shows where they get you to guess the number of balls in a jar, and the best answer is to take the average of what everyone else has said. That's the approach that I would take with this, in that atheism is an absolute position. It is denouncing the existence of a God based on a lack of compelling evidence.
No, sir, it's fucking not. Atheism is the position of not accepting.
Can I clarify the definition? Again, with all due respect, Matt, I am not an expert debater like yourself, so if I'm not using the correct word...
Due respect, you keep saying and declaring what our position is when you're wrong.
So atheism is not... Again, my understanding of atheism, just as a baseline definition, is the rejecting God on a lack of sufficient evidence.
No. See, so atheism is the position of not accepting the claim that a God exists. Why you reject it, why you don't accept it, why you don't accept it, why you reject it, could be based on a lack of evidence. It could be because you don't like God. Could be because you were molested by a priest. Your reason for getting to atheism is irrelevant to what atheism is. This is what happens when you get something wrong and we try to correct it, then you try to fix it and you make it more fucking wrong.
Yeah, I'm happy to concede the point.
Why not ask us? Why is it that theists seem to call in and want to tell us what our position is, what it should be, and how it's irrational, because they've created a straw man version of it instead of doing what they're supposed to do, which is defend their own fucking position. I'm still fucking talking. You have managed to say that you're going to defend a deistic proposition, and then also said that you're convinced of something that is not a part of a deistic proposition, and that is a God who loves. A deistic God is undetectable, devoid of interaction, and has no personality trait that you could possibly identify. And yet you have somehow convinced yourself that there must be, because of contingency or whatever reason, a deistic God and that he loves. And you can pretend that I'm the one that's irrational because I don't believe the shit that you're saying.
A lot of ground has been covered, and I do apologize for the interjection. I don't want it to have that sort of reaction. So again, apologies. I'll look out for those interjections. Just look to the point. There's some lines of thought that I pursue that I can say something with a degree of certainty just based on an intuition as well. And what I mean by that is we can all collectively agree right now that we are not dreaming. This is not a dream. We can't run any scientific test to prove that we're not dreaming, but our collective intuition can lead us to the conclusion that we are not in a dream right now.
And by the way, Amir, we could still be in a dream right now.
We could, absolutely.
Like this is so frustrating when we talk to religious people and we start finally getting to the point, and then they always they so often retreat to this very concept of, well, we don't even know if we exist. So let's not talk about the rationality of my position, where obviously everybody here is always already working on the foundation that we exist. If there's a thing we might have to presuppose, it would only be that, because there's nothing else you can do. Let's talk about the rationality of your position, where we don't need to go over the fact that we all agree we exist. We're good.
Meanwhile, there is a scientific test we can do to show that I'm not dreaming right now. The only way that that's true is if you are confusing dreaming, which has a particular definition within the reality we experience, with solipsism. There's nothing we can do to demonstrate whether or not solipsism is true at all. But I can definitely do a test to see if I'm dreaming right now. So you went from the dreaming definition within reality, which we can test for, you extrapolated that to make it co-equal to solipsism, which we can't test for, and committed an equivocation fallacy between the two of them. I can absolutely do a test now to find out whether or not I'm dreaming. I can't do a test to show whether or not the reality, I can't do a test whether or not to show that the reality I experience is real. Those are two different things.
What experiment would that be, out of interest?
We can hook me up to an MRI and get independent verification from other people.
Couldn't that be emulated in a dream?
Only to the extent that the dream that I'm experiencing is shared by other people. And so you can verify whether or not you're sharing that with other people by having questions that only one of those people can answer. What you're doing here, and yes, it could be that this is a dream within a dream within a dream within a dream, but we can't show that the reality we experience is real, but we can explore within the reality we experience what is real within that. And when I say we can't show that the reality we experience is real, I mean the ultimate true reality. Like, I can't show I'm not a brain in a vat. There's nothing that would show that I'm not a brain in a vat. But even if I'm a brain in a vat, there's within this reality a ground set of rules that define whether or not within this reality I'm dreaming or not.
Okay.
So do you believe presently, Amir, that within this reality, do you presently hold the position that it is irrational to be an atheist?
Look, with the way that you have both taken this conversation, I'm actually, possibly looking to revoke my position. I need to.
Let me fix your metaphor from before with the game show and the counting the beans or whatever thing was in the jar. Earlier, you said that the best thing to do would be to take the average of all of them. First of all, that could or couldn't be, but that isn't the position of atheism. Or the position, the opposing position would be, if you want an atheist, a metaphorical atheist there, the metaphorical atheist doesn't say all of you are wrong or one of you is right or any of those things. It is saying, if there's 5 of them, you guessed there was 100, you guessed 150, 200, 250, 300. I am not accepting that any of you are correct. That's the atheist position
Yeah.
completely. I'm not saying, because they might count,
Yeah.
and then when they count it, they go, oh, there is 200. The person who guessed 200 was correct. And when that happens, I will become not an atheist. Not because the person guessed correctly, but because we counted the goddamn jelly beans.
Yeah.
That's what an atheist.
I mean,
that's the fix to your metaphor.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I just wanted to then clarify something in that I just think that having a position on the extreme ends of the spectrum would become irrational. That also is therefore true for being a absolute theist.
No one is, in your metaphor, no one is taking in the extreme position that with a jar in front of them full of candy, that there is no jar of candy. No one's taking that position. But by the way, in your God proposition, the jar of candy hasn't shown up. So if anything, it's, hey, trust us. We have a panel of thousands of men who are speaking on behalf of a jar of candy. Trust us. There's a jar of candy in the other room. Trust us. And now start guessing how many pieces of candy are in it. With no frame of reference or any ability to investigate. Is it a big jar? Is it a little jar? Are we talking in the thousands, in the millions, in the dozens? Present the jar of candy.
Yeah,
the example that Amir came up with is
continue.
And the example that Amir came up with is right. It's about the wisdom of crowds. And so if you had one of those jars of gumballs and you had a sufficiently large group of people guess at the number that are in there, and that's a key thing. If you have 5 people guess, you don't have any reason to think that the average of their guess is close. You have to have a very large number of people to where the wisdom of the masses averages and gets closer to the actual number. And the reason for that is that while individuals could be wildly inaccurate, on the whole, we have a reasonably good understanding of reality. But as Jimmy points out, this isn't about count a number of gumballs, which, by the way, we can count to verify. This is about what is beyond our ability to investigate. And so the wisdom of the crowd can't exist for things that we don't have the ability to investigate. If you want to take the wisdom of the crowd for the number of gumballs or how long we've been having this conversation, or any number of things that is actually verifiable, where the reason people have for reaching their conclusion is based on empirical evidence and understanding of reality, that's fine. But you don't get to extend that and apply it to things that supposedly exist outside of space-time, things that are in a deistic model. A deistic God is an undetectable God that does not intervene in reality in any detectable way, which means there cannot be any wisdom of the crowd on whether or not such a being exists, because in order to make that determination, you would need data to bolster each individual's position. And the fact that they're smart on things that you can verify doesn't mean they know anything at all about something you can't verify. Deists are literally claiming to have detected the undetectable, and it's embarrassing to be called irrational by a deist.
I mean, just to that point, though, Matt, and it's a completely valid point. And when you talk about not having the ability to investigate, you see, different deists or theists can conjure up a much better rebuttal than what I'm about to say, because it is their expertise. They are like yourself, expert debaters, and thus,
Amir, we're talking to you.
You know, equally. I know.
What difference does that make to what I said?
Also, you see, when you're talking to me, my beliefs and my opinions are shaped by the people who I consider to be experts on the topic, and that includes yourselves. The number of times that I've been like, wow, yeah, you guys have just made back-to-back amazing points, that continues to influence the way that I think. Equally, when I see someone like William Lane Craig, and you know, there's been countless occasions where I feel that William Lane Craig has had the upper hand on renowned atheists like Sam Harris, for example. But equally, I can say with open-mindedness that I've seen William Lane Craig get owned by, let's say, Sean Carroll. I've seen those debates. So in that side, I've seen the atheists.
So Amir, what do you use outside? Because you're kind of rambling now. What do you use outside? If you're saying there are debates with two different positions, and sometimes a position A wins, and sometimes position B wins, and they are exclusive positions, they can't both be right, they could both be wrong. So you can't just go with who impresses you the most. What is the mechanism that you use to figure out what is correct that is outside of who is the most impressive or inspirational or well-spoken debater? What is your individual thing you're doing to figure out the actual answer to the question?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think maybe there we all have shared collective values in that we would, value things like logic, consistency, rationality at the forefront of what makes a compelling argument. But then, how we subjectively approach things like rationality, logic, which we can all agree become the foundations of a compelling argument, we may then interpret that differently. And that's when I feel things like accepting different views, because these are people that are absolutely convinced of the positions that they maintain, and they're fucking smart people, with all due respect to them, including yourselves. And so how do we go about navigating ourselves in a field of so many varying opinions without just saying the law of average is possibly the best way to consider something like this?
We do it by critical thinking and a skeptical evaluation of evidence. We do it by having good standards of epistemology. We do it by pointing out that all of those really smart people who are extremely convinced that a God exists do not support their God belief in the same way or with the same quality or quantity of evidence that they would for any other claim that they believe. That they are all reaching for something that goes beyond the normal. Oh, we can't justify this with science. Well, that's too fucking bad. Oh, what else can we justify it with? It's not a fault of rational epistemology that gods don't fucking conform to that standard. If there's a God, any God, deistic or otherwise, is it possible for it to present evidence for its existence in a way that is compatible with the most rigorous scientific standards of exploring the universe? Is that possible?
No, but that's the point, and this is what
so
we touched on earlier,
you think
God is like a scientific one.
You think it's impossible for any extant God to present scientific evidence for its own existence?
Correct. I don't think God can ever be scientifically rational.
How did you determine that it's impossible for God to provide scientific evidence of its existence? Which God have you investigated to determine its capabilities in order to say God can't demonstrate any scientific evidence for its existence?
Maybe let's use the word creator, because I feel the word God is right now having too many religious connotations, which, collectively we all agree.
I don't care what you call it. I don't care what, it doesn't matter what you call it. This is the point, Amir, is whatever you call it, you're saying there's something out there that is the creator of the universe, but it is incapable of providing scientific evidence for its existence. What method did you use to determine that the creator of the universe is barred from presenting scientific evidence for its own existence?
Because the origins of space-time and matter cannot be, in my opinion, explained by themselves, and thus the hypothesis that we would be testing, i.e. God, would have to be a timeless and immaterial hypothesis, and there's no experiment that we can devise to test something that exists outside of the experiment. It then becomes, a philosophical argument to present.
What I asked, so I could agree with everything you said, but what I asked was, what methodology did you use to determine that the creator of the universe is prohibited from presenting scientific evidence of its own existence?
Because here, understanding the question.
Before you jump in, your answer. No, stop. Your answer was that the origins of space and time. We don't know what the origins of space and time are. So already you start off talking about something that we don't have the ability to explore or investigate. You say you don't think they can be explained by themselves, which is irrelevant to the question you're being asked. I didn't ask you about the origin of space and time. And the origin of space and time aren't relevant to what the creator of space and time can do. It doesn't show, it shows if there was a creator of space time, you now know. My God, let me finish. If there was a creator of space and time, the existence of space and time will show you what it can do. It doesn't show you what it can't do. And yet you have determined that the creator of space and time cannot provide scientific evidence for itself. What method did you use to reach that conclusion?
I would say that if the creator wanted to be something that could be scientifically explored, then that would become quite obvious. And we could point our telescopes to the sky or our microscopes to the ground and just see evidence of God, and he'll be waving us and be like, yeah, you found me. The fact that he has not revealed himself in any obvious way means that he is not something that is. I hope that's a little bit more.
So what you're now saying
relevant to
is that you've reached the conclusion that the creator of the universe is incapable of presenting scientific evidence for its existence because it hasn't yet done so.
I guess the word incapable, he is capable if he wanted to be.
Okay, so now we have to back up. Now we have to back up and erase the last 5 or 6 minutes to where I said, can the creator of the universe present scientific evidence of its existence? And now you're going to say yes?
Can he? Yes, he could. Yeah, and by the way, this is just me now being able to process the question properly. It's not a jump in my viewpoint. So I'm just processing it.
Okay. So what method did you use to reach the conclusion that the creator of the universe can, in fact, demonstrate its existence scientifically?
If a creator exists and therefore has the capacity to do anything, if the creator can create a universe that can then host life, then it would follow that the creator could also present himself if he wanted to be scientific.
No, it does not follow from that. It not only doesn't follow from that, but previously, until I hand walked you down to the point where it reached a contradiction, you were asserting the opposite. So now what you're saying is that it is impossible for a being who created space and time to be unable to present scientific evidence for its existence. You're saying that's no longer possible. How did you rule out the possibility that something you absolutely are? The point that I'm getting to here is that you're reaching a conclusion about what the creator can or can't do, and you have no evidence and no methodology to make that determination about what it can and can't do. If you want to say, as you did just a second ago, that the creator of space-time can do anything, well, that's not true. What if the creator of space-time is only capable of creating space and time and then ceases to exist? Now, it is the case that it's impossible for them to present scientific evidence to their existence because they no longer exist. And you can't tell whether or not they continue to exist, or even if they existed to begin with. What if the creator of space and time can do some things within space and time, but can't provide scientific evidence of existence? Now, your first answer was right. What if this creator of space-time can, in fact, provide scientific evidence, but has not yet done so? Or what if he's done so, but we got it wrong? You have a number of different possible scenarios there. What methodology should we use to tell which of those scenarios is likely to be correct?
I feel like the response that I'm going to give is going to get bitch slapped across the face, because I don't think I have, at the crux of this, still understood what you're saying. And I do apologize for that, like with the uttermost sincerity. Yes, you've held me for the last 5 minutes, and I haven't completely understood the point, but I will just make this point to it, and hopefully this will answer it, in that if a creator exists, then that creator would need to have unfathomable amount of power and also be able to exercise free will. And as a result of having unfathomable power and free will, he can do anything and everything. If he wants to present himself so that he can be discovered scientifically, he can do that, but he has chosen not to because he has free will. So those are the two attributes or characteristics that I would append to a god: free will, full power.
So now you are suggesting, God. Now you're saying that if there is a creator, which is the very thing we're trying to prove, which means everything that follows it is conditioned upon that, which means nothing that follows upon that is going to be relevant to demonstrating that it actually exists, which is the whole thing we're trying to do. But if a creator exists, you said it must have unfathomable power. Well, unfathomable just means unknowable or something you can't comprehend. And yet you seem to be suggesting that you can comprehend it. Why would it need to have unfathomable power? Why wouldn't it be enough for it to just have just enough power to create space-time?
I mean, it could have, let's just say, quote unquote, enough power just to create space-time, but that just doesn't seem intellectually satisfying. It doesn't.
Oh, so now we're going on to what you find intellectually satisfying. Well, I'm sorry, Amir, but we don't get to use what Amir finds intellectually satisfying as a criteria for exploring the creator of the universe.
I think that's actually the key to this whole thing, honestly.
Can I just say, to the point about intellectual satisfaction, sorry. The point about intellectual satisfaction.
Let's make this your last point because we're about to cross the 40-minute mark. We have other calls, including theists, waiting. So let's do, clearly you have a lot of listening that you need to do, that you need to go back and listen to the call and adjust. But honestly, I feel like it took us 40 minutes to get to you an admission of just like, yeah, but that doesn't feel like a sexy enough answer to me.
But it didn't, because when he presented his contingency argument and anticipated what my rebuttal was going to be, my actual rebuttal was that you didn't present evidence. You just presented what you found personally compelling. So we're actually right back where we were 20 minutes ago. And now it's your turn, Amir. Say whatever you want to say.
Thank you. I mean, I just think the point about unfathomable power versus just enough power to create the universe can be inevitably brought down to intellectual satisfaction in the very same way that we can say with a very high degree of probability, putting aside the experiments that Matt proposed earlier, that we are not dreaming right now. We can't say it with 100% certainty, but we can say with like 99% conviction. And it is an intellectual satisfying answer. We cannot verify it in empirical ways. And so I would
These
say
are not comparable. Jesus Christ. I'm surprised you would still try to use a metaphor, because even within the realm of the reality that we are agreeing that we're in, any perception of our certainty that we're not dreaming, that there isn't some solipsistic version of using the word dream instead, we can talk about we're talking about something that's purely an experience-based thing of what I know in this reality that we're in is that a dream is like this. And I know that based on having dreams in the past, and that I'm not currently experiencing that thing, which is usually a dream of the past. However, I also enter into dreams where I'm convinced I'm not dreaming and think about, am I dreaming, and determine that I'm not. So this is a, I don't know why you are trying new metaphors when the old ones have failed and these ones are bad, Amir. Amir, I think we just end with, this was fun, kind of, well. And call back after you've re-listened to the call and sort of adjust the position, adjust the metaphors, and maybe rely on them less, because you keep trying to throw saving dice. You keep trying to do a saving throw with your metaphors, and they're not working.
Okay, no, but point taken, and really thank you both for your time. And Matt, please don't hate me. I have nothing but respect.
I don't hate you.
You might hate me.
I don't hate you.
Good.
Yeah,
good. Okay, because I have nothing but respect.
It's so weird, but if you think about nothing else, you are claiming to be able to tell the difference between two scenarios while demonstrating no mechanism or method by which anyone could tell the difference between those two scenarios. That's what deists do all the time, and that's what you've done at almost every point of this conversation.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Amir.
Yep. Cheers.
Wow, some of these coming in. Let's do one that's less similar to that last one. Let's talk to Etika in Massachusetts. Etika, you're on the line with Jimmy and Matt.
Okay. Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. You
Hi.
It says here you believe in the one true God and that you'd like to I think share that with us.
Yes.
Cool.
I want to tell you there is only one God in Jesus' name who died for us in the cross, and that's the only God who died and come back.
Etika, do you think we haven't heard that before?
I know, but my question, my real question was, who created the world? Since you guys don't believe in God, who created us, and why we here? What is the purpose of us, and who created everything? I'm saying now, who created them? Why and why?
Why do you assume there's a who?
What created them then? If it's not a who, what?
My parents created me. They had sex.
What about the trees? Who created the tree, the earth?
Their parents created them. Their parents had sex.
The fish?
Yes.
So who created your parents then? Who created your parents?
Their parents.
Who created their parents?
Their parents. Their parents created them.
Their parents. So,
Are you actually asking who created their parents, or are you trying to do the question we get all of the time, which is, what is the confirmed hypothesis, therefore theory, behind abiogenesis? What is the moment and the reason that at some point something wasn't alive and then something was? Because I don't think you actually are asking who created my parents and who created their parents, because so far the answer is always the parents before.
No, I want to know who created everything.
Why who?
Who what created everything? Why we here? What the purpose of Earth, of the planet Earth? Why we come on Earth? Why Earth? Why everything is around me? Why?
What color is cold?
Cold?
Yeah.
Black.
No, it's not. There's no color of cold. You're asking questions where you're asserting it as though we assume these questions have answers. Why are we here? As far as I can tell, because my parents had sex. Any additional?
Okay. We're not talking about humans.
And okay, why are humans here? Because all of their parents had sex. You're asking for a purpose, and I think you mean existentially. It could be that there is a language barrier here, and that we're simplifying it to terms. There is no reason that the answer, why does humanity exist, in some great existential sense, has to have any reason beyond because we are the result of natural processes that led to our existence here. There doesn't have to be an answer like, because I'm going to save the world, because I'm going to bring people to Jesus, or we haven't established that question has an answer. Many questions don't have answers. That cold doesn't have a color. We actually sort of pretend it does. We usually associate it with the color blue, but there are things that are cold which aren't blue. It doesn't have to be blue. That's a subjective human made up thing.
Okay. But let me tell you something. I assume that you not believe in the Bible, right?
Mm-hmm.
You not believe in the Bible because the Bible said why we here.
Okay.
And who created us and who created the world.
Okay, Etika, so here's what I'm going to say. Here's why you're here. It's whatever purpose you want to have is your purpose. So now I said that.
No.
The Bible said something else. How do we find out which of us is correct? Or
because
if we're both wrong?
Everything that God said always happened.
Like what?
Like what? Like, for instance, when he said that it's going to be the flood, when he asked Noah to build the boat,
mm-hmm.
the flood happened.
No, it didn't.
People died.
It did not happen.
Oh, it did happen?
No, it didn't.
Were you there?
Etika. No, Etika, were you?
I wasn't, but it's in the
Okay,
Bible,
you weren't
and I
there.
believe
So
in the
how?
Bible.
So if were you there is a refutation of a point, then you weren't there, so you don't know that the flood happened. Now,
But I believe in the Bible. I believe in the Bible. It's in the Bible.
Etika, lots
Yes,
of things have been written that aren't true. Just because it's written in the Bible doesn't make it true. And in fact, if the entire earth flooded, that would leave evidence. And all of the evidence points to, when we test these things scientifically, that there was no global flood. Plants wouldn't exist except whatever seeds he brought with him in a local area. The whole planet would have died, including the people on the boat, because it would have changed our atmosphere to be unsustainable to human life also, and all the other animal life. But beyond that, there is no evidence that the flood happened. And there is actually adequate evidence that no global flood ever happened. So you can't.
People were alive.
What's that? While people, sure.
Yeah, during the period of time where people have existed. You've asked all the same things that I was going to ask, because so Etika, let me try it this way. You're convinced that what the Bible says is true. I don't know how much of it you think is true.
100%.
But 100%. Cool. I'm not convinced that the Bible's true. It'd be cool if we could pick one thing that's in the Bible and you could show us how we can know that it's true. So, for example, let's suggest that let's take a look at, did Jesus spit in the dirt and put it on someone's eyes and cure them of their blindness?
Okay. I know you know about the Bible. I know, but don't you know that before Jesus came, he announced that he said that he was going to come and he was going to die, and everything he said happened. He said he's going to die. He was going to come back after 3 days.
Just ignoring Matt's question.
So you're not going to pay any attention. I sat here and listened, and I've now asked you how we can prove that Jesus spit in some dirt and healed a blind man, and you're going to ignore that question and talk about something else?
Because, I'm sorry. Because the Bible told me so. So I believe.
Okay. I understand that's why you believe.
Yes.
Why should we believe? Because I don't believe that the Bible is telling the truth about everything. And we need some sort of external evidence, because you don't believe the Quran, do you?
No.
So you've decided that okay. So, well, I guess you can't really say whether or not you believe it if you haven't read it, but you're not a Muslim. And so you believe the Bible. I don't believe the Bible. What can you do? How can you demonstrate how can you demonstrate that what the Bible says is true? I don't care whether or not you believe it. I'm saying the Bible says that Jesus healed a blind man. You are convinced that it's true. I'm not. Mm-hmm. How can you prove it to me?
Okay, what I can tell you about the Bible, how many books was written by so many people, and how many books on earth, so many people believe in it too, and so many people write the Bible.
No, stop. I'm asking a very specific question. I do not believe that Jesus rubbed mud into someone's eyes and cured them of blindness. You believe it. How can you prove that story is true?
Because because the Bible said it, and I believe in the Bible.
No. What you believe is irrelevant. How can you prove that it's true?
I don't have to prove anything. Why can I prove? I cannot prove anything.
Don't call our fucking show, because the purpose here is for you to present the evidence for what you believe. If all you're going to do, I mean, I could sit here, Etika, and say, well, you're full of shit. Well, you're full of shit. Well, you're full of shit. You're full of shit. I could just sit here and do that. But instead, I actually engage and talk about logic and reason and evidence, because I give a shit about what's true and you don't.
I do believe. I do.
No, you
agree with
don't.
them.
You don't care.
No, whatever you said about the truth, because I believe in the Bible. The Bible is the truth, the word of
No,
God.
the Bible's a
That's
big
why I
fat
believe in
fucking
it.
lie. The Bible's a lie.
Yeah, Bible's
The
not
Bible
true.
is full of lies.
But you know you are the only one who said that. The Bible is a
I
lie.
just
You are
said
the only one who said that. I never heard that before in my life.
Okay, well, you're hearing it now. The Bible's full of lies. The Bible lies from the very first verse.
Why you say that is a lie?
Why do we have to prove it? You
I
just
don't have
said-
to prove anything to you. I'm
the same
telling you
way
what I
have to prove
believe.
it, you can prove me is a lie too.
We asked why
No,
you.
I
We
don't
asked
prove
why.
anything.
We asked
You-
you,
you-
for proof.
You said you don't have to prove anything, so I don't have to prove anything either. The Bible
You
lies.
should.
It says
If you sure about if you should you should. If you
No,
know
no,
something
no, no,
is so
no,
bad,
no,
it's
no,
a lie.
no.
The lie been
what's
sprayed.
what's the
The
first
lie
verse?
is spraying around the
What-
wall.
What's the first verse? What's the first verse of the Bible?
The first verse is Genesis first. God created the world. God created everything. That's the first verse of
Okay.
in the Bible.
What Genesis 1 says is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. There are no heavens
Yes.
and the earth wasn't, and there are no heavens and the earth wasn't created in the beginning. Therefore, Genesis 1:1 is a lie. The earth formed
Oh, you
billions of years.
Oh, you know there
The
was no
earth,
heaven.
the earth
Oh, you know there was
formed,
no
the
heaven.
the earth formed billions of years after the beginning.
What beginning?
The beginning of the universe.
Listen, if you
What?
know something is if you know something is that bad, you should spread the word. Tell everybody you know.
I
that
do.
The Bible's a
You're-
lie.
The fuck
Are
do
you
you
really
think
this
we're doing here?
stupid? You're actually calling in. I've been doing live shows to spread the word for almost 20 years. You're calling
You said that the
into a
Bible
show.
is wrong?
You're calling into a show. You're calling into a show suggesting I spread the word. Are you really this dumb? Or are you a troll?
No, I'm a very smart person. Thank you very much.
Your laughter gives it away, Etika. You are not serious. You are not serious.
No, I am dead serious.
Nope, you're not
Because-
serious.
Because
You're not worth
if you are that
talking
good,
to.
if
You don't want to
no, if
prove
you believe that
anything.
much, if
You're
you
not
believe-
serious. You're done wasting my time.
Listen, if you believe that the Bible is a lie, and so many people believe it's the truth, you should say it. You should prove it too. You should prove it is a
I
lie,
have
and
been
so
for
everybody
20
can follow
years.
you.
If you
I
believe
have
it's,
been.
wait, Etika, if you believe the Bible is true, you should prove it's true.
I don't. There's so many people out there who's proving it.
Etika, no.
There's so many
Etika,
Christians.
there are so many people who believe the Bible is a lie. The majority
not
of the
serious.
earth isn't Christian. Etika, the
This isn't
majority of the
serious.
earth
I'm not
isn't.
on the radio.
Etika, shut the fuck up.
Listen.
Shut the fuck up. I'm talking. You can talk when I'm done. The Bible is not the Bible being true is not the majority perspective on the earth. Most people aren't Christians. Most people don't believe the Bible.
But we got a lot of
If
Christians.
you believe the Bible is true, you should prove it.
Many people proving it.
No,
Many,
they have
many,
not.
many, many,
Not
many
one
thousands, hundreds of
person,
people
not
believe it.
one person has proven the Bible is true. But if you believe they have, and you've apparently heard it, offer us the proof. What is one proof from the many people? My God, there should be so many examples. Many people have proven it true. Give us one of the proofs that prove to you and will prove to us that the Bible is true.
The Bible is true because Jesus said that he was coming, he was going to die, he was going to come back, and everything happened.
Okay, prove that. Prove that everything you just said happened. Prove that Jesus came back. Prove that Jesus existed.
In the Bible. In the Bible. You have to believe in the Bible to believe that.
Wait, oh my God, you're an idiot.
Believe
Etika,
the
you're too
Bible to
stupid for
believe
this.
the Bible.
You're either too
Congratulations.
stupid or a troll. Goodbye.
This is a troll. I don't believe anybody's
I
that
don't know.
stupid.
I've met people that stupid before, so I don't know. Or that much of a failure at this specific thing. I don't know whether she's generally stupid or just that indoctrinated into nonsense. I've never had a person who wanted to be called. In fact, I'm going to ask that we change it because I feel this could be clipped poorly to make us look like bigger assholes than we actually are. So as I bring on the caller who is asked to go by the name Muslim, I'm going to ask you to give us a different nickname or a different fake name Because if we're just screaming, if at some point we're yelling something like Muslim, you're not listening, that can be clipped poorly. So Muslim in the US, give me a different nickname we can put on the screen for you as opposed to Muslim.
Yeah, for sure. You guys could put like coffee lover. I like coffee. Or
All right.
I'm drinking it right now.
That's
Tea
fine.
lover or something like that.
Coffee lover's fine. You could have just picked a fake name. You could have gone by Nick, but we'll go with coffee lover. That's fine.
Okay, cool. How are you guys today?
Peachy. How are you?
Exhausted.
Yeah.
Exhausted. Okay. Yeah, I'm doing well. So I guess kind of relating to the last person. So like so I'm currently so I'm Muslim, and in our religion we kind of believe, so unlike the Bible or the Torah today, we believe that the Quran is unchanged and the unchanged word of God. And a lot of people, even probably in the millions today, unlike other religions, have memorized the entire book from cover to cover. So from this, we kind of believe that the text has been completely preserved word for word. And even some other academics like Marvin Van Putten, who was, I think, he had like a $2 million grant from the UN, even tried to where he tried to debunk this, but he said that the Quran has been preserved, and if you even look at some texts, they have some differences, but the inherited texts of those do not have that same difference, and he thinks it's due to the oral compass of how it's preserved. So I just wanted to know what your guys' thoughts on these are. This is, or yeah.
Yeah. I have not much. If a book, as an atheist, I guess I don't understand the crossover of, would I be very impressed to find out the modern day Quran is identical to the past Quran if there was a break in the custody of the Quran and that it had to be entirely passed on by oral tradition? That would impress me to no end. However, that you can't prove that that's not how it happened doesn't mean it did happen. And so I wouldn't say that what you just described established that the word for word Quran was maintained by only oral tradition for some period of time that would make it impressive. But if that was ever proven, I would find that very impressive. It just hasn't been.
It was always written.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was written, but I mean, for example, like if you go to the Uthmanic text, there's a long story on how it's worked, but where it's been canonized. So initially, the Quran, I believe, had a few different readings, but then one was canonized. From then, like there was even academic studies. If you find the oldest, it's practically exactly the same as today. And even if you look at a few texts in between, you will find some differences, but they do not.
Who cares? Everyone had the written reference. Who cares?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
You're arguing for something that isn't in dispute. I do not care if the copy of the Quran that you have today is 100% textually identical to the original. I wouldn't. I mean, it's always been written. It's one of the strengths of the Quran over the Bible is that the Bible existed in oral tradition for a good period of time. Whether or not you have a perfect copy of the original is irrelevant when we're talking about, is it true?
Can you go deeper into that?
No, that's it.
Do you think that my copy of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is 100% accurate to what the author originally wrote?
Yep.
Yeah. Does that mean that it's true?
No, I mean, you're getting a book that's not even 100
So why would I have needed to go deeper into something that is patently fucking obvious? That the truth of what a book says isn't contingent on whether or not you have an original copy.
I agree with your logic, but if you then go, let's say, like on the Quran, right? It was you have Harry Potter with preserved with the best technology and this and that. The Quran is 1,400 years old and has gone to all continents, honestly.
So what? That doesn't change. Why are Muslim apologists the absolute fucking worst?
1,400 years ago, the methods for if the Bible had been written 1,400 years ago, the advancement in preservation of written word because of the 1,000 years prior of shit breaking down would have also advanced the Bible to be capable of being preserved as such.
Let me bring one thing.
The
though.
newer
So,
book is more well preserved than the older book. Wow.
But as Muslims, we also believe in the Bible, Torah, and Zabur, but we believe that people they changed those by their hand or
I don't care what you believe. I care if what you believe is true.
Exactly.
When are you going to stop telling me what you believe and start demonstrating that it's true? I don't care what you think about the Bible. It's irrelevant.
Okay. I think it's true because these reasons. Number one, for Islam, right? If you had a book 1400 years ago, I'm really skeptical that just some person can make a very eloquent book that even has a challenge in it that to produce a surah like it, and that will be, and where God in the book guarantees it'll be preserved and makes that promise, and then it is preserved.
Okay, so you're very, wow, you are, I think you use the word skeptical and you don't know how to be skeptical. I also am skeptical that a book that advanced would come out of something like that from just one dude. And because, never mind, I'm just going to put it, I suspect that isn't actually what happened. And then for a book to say this will be preserved and it be the central claim, the central book of a religion, and then the religion preserves it. Do you know what a self-fulfilling prophecy is, coffee lover? Because you can just do the thing the book says.
Okay, so you're saying that it's not actually the evidence of God, it's just that the followers, because it's the central claim.
It's very boring that you think that this is evidence of God, that the religion preserved the book that said it would be preserved is exceptional to you. It's fucking bizarre.
Yeah, it's so one of the things, let's maybe set that aside for a second, because I think we're all in agreement that you're not going to convince us that Islam is true if you don't actually start presenting evidence for the proposition that Islam is true. Now, I'm happy to believe that the modern versions of the Quran, I have one right here, lest someone, think I'm not remotely familiar. I'm happy to accept that those are almost perfectly in line with what was originally written. I'm happy to accept that there are billions of people who have and who continue to believe in the Quran. This is also true, by the way, of Christianity and other religions. But the truth of a belief isn't conditioned on how many people believe it, how long they've believed it, how strongly they believed it. None of those things impact whether or not the belief is true, because plenty of people have believed untrue things for millennia. So apart from just saying it seems unlikely to you, which doesn't matter, that this book could be preserved after saying it was going to be preserved unless there's a God, is bizarre. What evidence can you present that shows that Islam, in its tenets and its claims about reality, are actually true?
Okay, so one claim it'll be a little away from the Islamic preservation of the text, but God says that there is a something called a fitra, where it's like a natural inclination towards believing a higher power. And today we see, majority of people are believing a higher power, just maybe a billion or so, not in different countries like that.
Hang on.
Okay.
What you just said is that God says there's a natural inclination towards believing in a God. Well, first of all, I'm not aware that God has ever said anything. So you don't get to say God says it. You would have to say the Quran says there's a natural inclination to believing. And that is, you might as well be saying the sky is blue, because we know that people make mistakes in thinking, and that people seek and see agency, and that things like pareidolia make us see agency where it's not there. Pareidolia is the propensity of humans to see agency and or faces where they aren't. Pareidolia is when the leaves in a bush rustle, you are more likely to think that there's a creature in the bush. And so you avoid it because the ones that stick their head in the bush are the ones that end up dying. Evolutionarily, it preserves the species to be suspicious and to see agency. Plus, we are raised by people who are wiser than us. And so the patriarchal system or the top-down system of saying, hey, all my life, these people looked after me and taught me things. They were right about all these other things. It's likely that they're right about all these, these things that I can't prove. All of that together makes it completely unremarkable for any book to say people tend to presume godlike agency or spirits, whether or not they're there. And so that's not proof of Islam. That is proof that Muslims were able to look at other people and say, wow, we're a curious bunch. We tend to see gods.
Yeah.
Because by the time Islam came around, there had already been many millennia of people believing in gods. And so you have thousands of years of cultures believing in a variety of different gods. How can it ever be remarkable for someone to write in the Quran, there's a natural inclination to believe in gods? Of course there is. And water is wet.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the more direct metaphor would be like, I don't believe the Bible is true just because the Bible establishes Jerusalem exists.
So how would we go about proving that Islam is true? Not that there's something in the Quran that's true. There's plenty of things in the Quran that's true. There's plenty of things in the Bible that's true. I'm sure that Donald Trump, who's an absolutely vile, disgusting liar, I'm sure he said things that were true. Pointing to the things that somebody said were true doesn't mean that the other things they said were true or that the ideology behind it's true. So what can we use to tell if Islam is true?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, then I don't know. I think I'll maybe then call back later and maybe think a little more about it.
That'd be dope.
But yeah,
I greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Coffee Lover.
What time zone are you in, Coffee Lover?
Pacific time.
So we start at noon your time. So if you wanted to get in earlier next time, and we have also more time as well. Next Sunday we'll be here at noon. If you're wanting to chat with Matt specifically, I think you'll have to call the Sunday after because Matt is taking off a rare Sunday next Sunday.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you guys. Yeah, I'll reflect on all these.
But you don't need to talk to me specifically.
Yeah, could be, maybe not. It'll be me and Derek
from Jimmy and somebody else.
Derek from Myth Vision will be with me next week.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know Derek very well. I can't remember if we've actually done anything together. I think we were like Facebook friends, but now we're not. Or I don't know what the hell's going on. I have seen some of the stuff that he's produced, so I hope you guys have a great show. Can
I call you Colo next time?
Yeah, you can call me that next. Actually, just before Steve, is it cool if I mention one thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I watched Myth Vision podcast, and that is where I saw he interviewed the academic Marvin Van Putten who was talking about the preservation and everything. But yeah, he shared your same point actually. He said even if the Quran is preserved, what does that mean really, right? So yeah, that's a good point. I think I'll need to reflect on these.
So why did you save the point? Did you think maybe we wouldn't have? Never mind. We'll talk.
Maybe we wouldn't have agreed.
Yeah,
he's just an academic. He doesn't deal with religion. He just deals with the linguistic, right?
All right.
So I was thinking of you guys in that regard because he doesn't deal with if this is divine. He doesn't. That's out of his pay grade. He just deals with the linguistic aspect. So I wanted to just talk to you guys about. So
cool.
I'll call later. Yeah, and thank you guys.
Thank you. See you, Colo.
Sure. Yeah.
Matt, is the Quran that you have there, is it written in Arabic?
No.
Then you were wrong earlier. It is not the original word.
It's both are in there.
I'm teasing.
But yes,
there are actually Muslims who will basically say if you don't learn Arabic and read, you probably know this, but if you don't learn Arabic and read it in Arabic, then you haven't read the real Quran.
Yep.
You got a preference on, well, this guy's been waiting forever.
No, the one that's been on the phone the longest.
Yeah. Jason.
I almost want to start by apologizing
Yeah, that's true. In fairness, we gave one person 40 minutes, and we don't have the time to give Jason 40. But Jason, in Tennessee, you are... Oh, sorry, you aren't on the line. Let's try that one more time. Wow. Can you try hitting talk? I just get the circle, and then it goes away. Would you mind trying to pick that up?
Let me see what I can do.
Yeah.
Yep. I hit it. There we go. Jason's online.
Excellent.
Thanks for waiting.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Sure do.
Thank you.
We can.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, let me go ahead and get to my question. I won't be long-winded just because I know you guys are pressed for time. I'm going to do more of a question rather than an argument today, and I'll come back another time for an argument. I know you guys... Okay, well, I can't say I know. Matt, you stated earlier you like if theists will ask you your position, just to clarify instead of state your position. Is it fair to say or to ask that both of you would say, as agnostic atheists, you lack a belief in God?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Jimmy, does that apply to you too? Sorry.
Yeah, I was the one who said sure, but yes.
Okay. Now, my question when I called in, and I was trying to explain to the call screener, was if you said something like on a scale of 1 to 100, 100 being convinced there is no God, I understand that there's no Cartesian certainty or understanding of knowledge here, okay? I'm not going to claim that you guys have knowledge one way or the other. But if you said your confidence level that there probably isn't a God, if one being that you're not certain at all, and 100 being you're almost, well, you are completely certain, where would your confidence level lie that there's likely not to be a God?
I think you'll find the question incredibly uninteresting unless you give me a specific God you want to react to. Putting a number to it is also a bit silly, so I'd probably try to use words to describe it. As, there are some days that extremely confident might feel like 85% to me, and some days that I would say anything over 30% is an excess of confidence. So all of that can be subjective to how one feels on a given day. But if you're just asking broadly about a God, I am 0% certain that there is no God or anything I would recognize as a God anywhere. But that does not mean that I am also 0% certain that there is a God somewhere. It matches my certainty and my uncertainty. Regarding specific gods, that confidence goes up. I feel that there is an adequate burden of proof that anything you would call the biblical God doesn't exist.
Okay. And for the purposes of my call, since, again, I know we're limited on time and I'm going to be succinct here, it's going to be, a deistic framework. I was going to go with, you kind of hit on it a little bit with Amir earlier, talking about the origin of space and time, or linear time, the Big Bang Theory, or the cosmological argument, talking about a creator God, let's say a personal agency that created the universe, just a deistic framework, not a religion. Yeah, you're saying you're not really sure where you fall on that confidence level?
No, I said the opposite. I said 0% certain, which is the same as or 0% certain it doesn't exist, which matches identically to my 0% certainty that it does exist.
So here's the flaw in the question. Sorry, Jason.
Okay.
All three of us agree that there exists a universe that we share. Right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, cool. There needs to be some sort of explanation for why there is the universe that we experience. When we try to determine what that is, we need to begin by making a list of candidate explanations. What sort of thing could explain why there's a universe? I'm not convinced that the God proposition has even been demonstrated to be a candidate explanation, as in a possible. I don't know that it's possible. And so if the case is pick the most probable, if you're going to make an abductive argument for it's most reasonable to conclude, given that we don't know what the actual answer is, that it's more probable than not that there's some sort of intelligent, creative being behind it all. That's not true. What's happening there is the correct answer is we don't know what the candidate explanations are, but people have made up possible explanations. Multiverse, God. Cool. Let's just say that right now, those are the only two that we have. Some version of a multiverse or some version of God. At least with a multiverse, there is no additional assertion that the multiverse is a thinking agent that intentionally made this particular universe. It is naturalistic processes that, even though they extend beyond the nature of the universe we experience, don't add the unnecessary, oh, it's a thinking agent, oh, it has these desires. So just putting those two up front, not knowing whether or not either of them is truly a candidate. I don't know whether the multiverse is truly a candidate or God is truly a candidate. I would say the multiverse wins on probability just because it doesn't violate Occam's razor. The God multiplies entities unnecessarily. But because I don't know if either of them are candidates, then instead of saying, what is your confidence that there is no God? I mean, that's like saying, if we find a dead body, what is your confidence level that it's not my brother who killed them? Without any way to investigate, without any evidence, how confident are you that my brother didn't kill that body? That's the question you're basically asking me. And it's absurd. I can't possibly answer that because I don't have enough information to conclude it didn't. I don't have enough information to conclude it did. I don't even know if it's reasonable to conclude that my brother is a candidate for the dead body. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yes, Matt, completely. I think another way to phrase the question so it doesn't sound as absurd, because I play it in my mind a lot easier than when it comes out into words. It's going to be a barometer of somebody's feelings on the matter. I understand, and I think this is the part I have trouble wrapping my head around as atheist, but also somebody talking from a scientific perspective, and I'm not a scientist, is going to say if I talk about the Big Bang Theory and try to weigh the probability of whether it's a personal or non-personal agency involved in the creation of the universe, I don't even know how to begin to assign a probability. I can only come up with what I believe to be a rational explanation, but I don't have probabilities. And I think for philosophical arguments, I think we all struggle to come up with precise probabilities. It might be up beyond the scope of our understanding or intellect.
It's like just now,
yes,
just
Matt,
now when you mentioned, when you mentioned you don't even know how to begin to weigh the probability. I don't either. And we use the word probability in two different ways. Like, first of all, we need to figure out whether or not something's possible, but probability normatively involves either a calculation or an approximation. When we say, what's the probability of rolling a die on a 6-sided die, or rolling a 1 on a 6-sided die on a normal one, it's 1 in 6. If we say, which is more probable, rolling a 4 on a 6-sided die or rolling a 5 on a 100-sided die? Well, not knowing anything at all about, what other numbers might be on there, if we just go with the normative one, we can calculate, or even if we don't want to do the math, we can approximate the probability. I don't even know how to begin to approximate the probability. But what I can say is that for the example that I gave, or multiverse versus God, the multiverse doesn't add things that are necessarily, like, it doesn't require that there's a magical being who exists outside of space-time forever who then can do stuff. But when we're making the list of candidate explanations, I'm kind of stuck. And so instead of saying, how confident are you that God doesn't exist? It should be, every single time anyone who's saying they have good reason to believe that some God exists, they have a burden of proof. And it's not up to anybody else to disprove them, although that's what we end up spending a great deal of our time doing, is, it's like when we talked to Amir earlier, and Amir went from, because he thinks a God's probable, that leads him to conclude that because he thinks that God's probable and that we don't have scientific explanation for him, he has to explain that. And so his first answer is, God can't give scientific evidence. And then when he finds out that leads to a problem, he goes back and revises it, and he says, God can present scientific evidence. He just hasn't or doesn't. And so then the next question becomes, why not? And now that's how you get to, the deistic type gods. Because he's a non-interventionist God. Yes. But if he's not intervening, you're basically claiming to detect the undetectable. And yet Amir, who wants to stick with the deist God, I shouldn't be beating up on him. He's not here. I should be talking to Jason, but he wants to stick with the deist God because it doesn't come with the baggage that a theistic God does. And yet he also wants that God to be loving.
Right. Becomes theistic.
And you can have no more reason for that than the other. So leaning towards a deistic position is, to me, one of the most unreasonable things that one can do.
Yeah.
Because the deistic God, by definition, isn't detectable by us. And so anyone who claims there's a deistic God is essentially asserting that they have either detected the undetectable or that they have reasoned a way to detect without manifestation the undetectable. And I don't know how you do that either.
I will say I agree about it is extremely unreasonable, and it's something you usually realize later, and a lot of ex-religious people do it, even though they're trying to be more reasonable. And in other words, I'm just saying it is extremely unreasonable. However, I also empathize with the fact that people do it because it's clearly like for a lot of people, a last ditch effort to hold on to a type of magic that you literally believed in. And in some ways also to not take on a label that, if you take on the label atheist, suddenly your family and people around you treat you differently. And so I can understand almost in apathy with people who go, well, I believe in something, because they want to satiate those people around them. However, I don't excuse it. I just understand it. I did think, Jason, while you were talking, that I might have an answer to a question you didn't ask. Sorry, did you have something?
Well,
I was just going to add real quick, or
I want Jason to get it.
Sorry, I think there was a little bit of an audio delay.
Yeah, you're fine. Go ahead.
I think I just wanted, for clarification purpose, Jimmy and Matt, you both used the word magic, and I want to be charitable in the use of the word. Is it substitutionary for things we can't explain, or how would you explain or define magic?
I would define it as specifically the ability to violate the physical laws of reality.
Yeah, I'd easily use it interchangeably with supernatural.
Yeah,
personally.
and again, I almost hate the word supernatural just because I think that there's a realm of understanding even within, what you call the confines of physics or laws that, I think we still don't have perfect understanding anyway. So when people say magic or supernatural, I still don't know exactly what that means. Is one person's understanding different than another's? Absolutely. I get the gist of what you're saying, though. I'm not trying to be uncharitable. I guess I want to be quick here because, again, I could go down a rabbit hole and have 50 different arguments by the time we're done.
Well, if you want to be quick, actually, let me do two things with you then. You called in with a question that I assume, come on, I get time. Jay, you called in with a question. I assume you've answered it for yourself, right?
Well, if I can just put it really quickly another way, so it doesn't sound.
I just want to know. I want to know what number you had given it beforehand. What probability you had given.
Given to you guys or for myself?
When you asked yourself the question you asked us, what probability do you put on it? What number did you come up with?
Well,
maybe I'm misunderstanding you, Jimmy. I'm having trouble understanding the way you're putting the question back.
You called us and you said, what probability on your do you put on your confidence that there is no God? And so what probability have you put on your confidence that there is a God?
I can't weight a probability. However, I would say for myself, my confidence and level in a deistic framework or a God is definitely, I'm leaning that direction. I would say, if I had to throw out a number, I would say probably about 90% to 95% confident. I have a belief system, but I don't have any Cartesian certainty or knowledge.
And I believe, and my guess is that your justification for that 95 is the stuff you were saying you were wanting to do a different day. Or do you want to share that here?
Well, a lot of it just because I'm going to be going way past probably your guys' time limit, and the argument's going to go into something else. I would say, again, I start with, as a theist, I start as a stepping stone looking at the Kalam cosmological, or I look at the Big Bang Theory. I try to come up with not come up with, that sounds like I have an intent, but I look at it like, okay, is there a rationale behind whether or not there's a personal agency? And once I establish that argument and say whether it's valid or logical, the next stepping stone is going, are we familiar with who that agency would or would not be? And that's a whole nother argument for another day. But my, I guess to be quick and to the point, again, I keep saying that, but I really know you guys are pressed for time. My logic would be to say that if in the scientific realm, which I'm not a scientist, in the scientific realm, if the Big Bang Theory is right now currently held as the most provisionally sound and secure model that they are now positing. Now there's other theories, I understand that. But if that is true, then we have to go back to the point of singularity and go whether or not when this point of singularity came into motion, right, it expanded, whether or not there was a personal or non-personal agency behind it. I can't weight a probability behind it, but I could say that I could come up with a perfectly sound justification for why I believe that a personal agency was used into bringing that into being.
But you're saying you don't want to do that today, or you're now wanting to do that?
Well, I'm saying I think it's a rational belief to hold to say that it's probable or likely that a personal being made a conscious decision to set the Big Bang into motion, because otherwise, and forgive me if my scientific background is not perfectly sound here, that when we say prior to, there's no timeline, but in the logical sense of prior to, the point of singularity could have been an infinite state of matter or energy. And I've heard other people that are scientifically qualified say something to that degree. If it was in an infinite state prior to that happening, okay, you'd have to come up with, not that we have to produce something right now, we could wait on more scientific evidence to come in, but if we want to have a discussion about it, I do think it's rational to say that there's a likelihood to the idea. But again, I can't weight a probability. So I can't come to you and act like I have
and yet you got to 95%.
Philosophical argument.
Yeah, that's literally what I was going to say. Is you've put a number on your own confidence, then you also,
well, not just on that piece,
and you also in your explanation switched rational, possible, and probable for each other. I'm assuming you only meant one of the three, but you used them all three the same way. Then you said you can't weigh a probability. You've already established you haven't. We've already discussed that you haven't established a possibility, let alone before a probability, and yet your confidence is so anchored so incredibly high. I don't know. That's a very strange series of events to me.
No, Jimmy, I'm sorry if I misspoke, but I'm not saying my 95% level of confidence, if I just arbitrarily weight a number here on a scale, I'm not saying it solely exists on this philosophical reasoning or argument alone. I'm saying in this particular case, whether the universe came into existence through a personal or non-personal agency, I can't give you a probability,
or possibility.
I mean, not in a sincere level. But I'm saying that there's
and yet you've reached the conclusion. And when you started to talk about why, you said, well, because of the Kalam, what's the collusion of the Kalam?
Well, to my understanding, I don't have it pulled up right now, but that there is a personal God and it is linked to the Christian God.
No. That is not the Kalam cosmological argument. Is everything that begins to exist has a cause for its existence. The universe has a cause for its existence. Therefore, or the universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause for its existence. That's the entirety. It does not conclude anything about a personal creator. So that's not a reason to conclude a personal creator. Then you said the other thing other than the Kalam was Big Bang Theory, but the Big Bang Theory doesn't have anything at all about a thinking agent or personal creator. Then you went back to the singularity, and you just said that you could come up with a perfectly sound justification for why it is reasonable to conclude that this is the result of a decision by a thinking agent. I would love for if it's perfectly sound, then I will accept it, as will anybody. And so I don't think you're using sound in the way that the rest of us would use sound. And when you say that you can't calculate or tell the probability or likelihood of this, yet you have an extremely high confidence that there was a thinking agent. So can you we only have one universe, so I don't know what other universe you've been able to explore to try to figure out what the potential causes of it. You would need to demonstrate that there can be a thinking agent absent a material brain, and show an example of when a thinking agent has ever done anything remotely like creating a universe.
Jason, you there?
Is that a segue for a question? I was just waiting on you.
I'm saying those are the two things that you'd need to do. Like if you say you can give a perfectly sound justification, but whatever justification you give must account for a thinking agent that is not derived from a material brain, and that you have some example of any thinking agent doing something remotely like instantiating a universe. I don't think you have examples for either one of those. Do you?
No, of course, I have no example, being this is the only universe that we're familiar with. I have no, when I use the word sound argument, I didn't mean that I had concrete evidence or proof. The way I meant it semantically was saying this is a viable option within our understanding,
but it's not
of what
a viable
the
option.
could be.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, even under that definition, to say that something is a viable option, what you're saying is that it's reasonable to conclude that a thinking agent is responsible for the origin of the universe. And in order for that to be reasonable to conclude, you'd have to show that a thinking agent can exist outside of the universe, and that a thinking agent can, in fact, create a universe. You have nothing to demonstrate that either of those are possible. So how can that be a viable candidate explanation?
Well, again, I don't have a demonstration of physical evidence here. Of course, we all can agree on that.
I'm just saying
that I think there's a philosophical argument.
No. So look, when I said we found a dead body and we suggested that perhaps my brother killed him, if we have no evidence that my brother exists and no evidence that my brother had means, motive, or opportunity, then is my brother even a viable candidate for the position of the murderer?
I again, just giving you a little hint of my background as somebody, what I do professionally. I've worked in a special investigation unit for insurance. We do origin and cause, so this is related.
Is anything about what you do professionally an answer to my question? Or look, if we're making a list of potential candidates for who murdered this body that we just found, does my brother go on the list if there's no evidence that my brother exists and no evidence that my brother had means, motive, or opportunity? Do we get to consider him a viable candidate as the murderer?
Could we consider them as somebody that we want to interview and consider? Yes, but we can't come to a conclusion.
Of you trying to rehabilitate this in order to avoid answering the question.
No, I'm trying to answer it. I understand the question.
No,
sorry,
it's really easy. If we found a body, Jason, you and I found a body right here in Austin, Texas. It's on my front yard. Somebody says we should consider my brother as a candidate in this murder, and they have no evidence that I even have a brother, and no evidence that he has means, motive, or opportunity to do it, do we get to consider my brother a candidate for the position of murderer?
In the way you elaborated, then no.
Okay, if we find a universe on my front yard and somebody says God created it, and we don't have any way to confirm that God exists or that God has means, motive, or opportunity to do so, does God get to be a candidate for that universe we just found in my front yard? The fact that there's no answer is absolutely mind-numbing. I don't get it.
Trick. It's not a trick. It just undermines your foundation.
Facts of reasonable epistemology. No, you don't get to consider God a candidate until you demonstrate why God should be considered a candidate, which would require that God is capable of doing something like this and that he exists. As soon as you demonstrate that my brother exists and that he had means, motive, and opportunity, he gets to be a candidate for that murder, and not 1 second before. You want God to be a candidate for something when you can't demonstrate that God could be a candidate, and you want to claim it's perfectly sound or eminently reasonable or whatever language you want to use. But the fact of the matter is, it's not. Something doesn't become a candidate explanation until you show that it can possibly be a candidate explanation. And this is the mistake that the Kalam makes when they try to extend it beyond therefore the universe had a cause to therefore that cause is God. You got to show it.
Jason,
I'm sorry that the example, but anyway, go ahead.
What time zone are you in, Jason?
I am in Central Time Zone. It's cool. 5 o'clock.
2 o'clock next Sunday, 2 o'clock the Sunday after, 2 o'clock the Sunday after that. The earlier you call, the better. If you want to watch the call, adjust some of your arguments, adjust some of your positions. Again, Matt will be off next week if it's Matt specifically you're wanting to reevaluate some stuff with. Otherwise, I'll be here with Derek from Myth Vision. But 2 o'clock Central Time, and like I said, next week and probably every week after, even on holidays. Give us a call, all right?
Hey, Jimmy, can I ask one quick last thing? It's not related to the argument.
Go for it.
Okay. Last time I called in, I spoke with Matt and Dave Warnick, I believe is his name.
Yeah, great guy.
Is Dave doing okay? I'm just sincerely asking.
Buddy, every week on Tuesdays at 6 p.m., you can watch, and if you wanted, you could call Dave Warnock at 6 p.m. because he is on this very channel on a show called Dying Out Loud. Let me answer your question, I guess, sort of directly, but also what you're really at. No, of course he's not doing okay. He has ALS, and it is going to kill him. But it probably won't kill him this week, and he will probably still be well enough to do a show this week, for example, this Tuesday with Footless Joe. So that's the best answer I have for you, but you can come and in fact, another thing you can do if you like Dave and you want to support him and the conversations and everything, on Tuesday you could send a super chat for $5 or more, and he'll read it at the end, and he could say, "Hey Dave, we talked a while back. I just wanted to know how you're doing." If you didn't want to call in, if you just wanted to ask him, and he'll read it out and he'll answer in his own words too. I'm using you a bit as a prop here, Jason, to promote shows and tell people things they can do, but very much if you would like to as well. You could do that on Tuesday.
Okay. Well, thank you for all that, Jimmy, and thank you guys for your time.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
Or sorry. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thank you.
That is not the first time I have made that mistake, calling a Jason a Dave or a Dave a Jason, because on top of the caller Jason and a co-host named Dave Warnock, I have a brother named David and a brother named Jason. And that very mix-up has probably happened hundreds of times in my life, that very specific one. We're going to take this last call here before we head over to Aron Ra's channel, where I will be reading the Book of Mormon with a panel. Depending on the direction this is going to go, I think I remember this caller also. We may ask to continue at another time, if it's going to take long, but let's see what happens. We're talking to a theist from New York. This is Tony, and if it's the Tony, I think so. The first time,
Brooklyn.
That's right. I loved the first time you called. You gave the most existentially Brooklyn. How you doing? When we answered it was the best. Anyway.
Hey, how you guys been?
How you been?
What's new with you guys?
Living the dream. However, this is generally when the show is ending, so we're gonna maybe jump past some of the pleasantries and get kind of closer to the.
I'm trying to be friendly. You know what I mean?
For sure.
That's what I'm trying to do.
Give us
You know, I'm a nice guy, bro. You know what I mean?
You and me both. Tony, what did you want to talk about?
Nah, just, you know, you guys told me to give you a call back, so that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean?
All right.
And realistically, you know, we talked about a few things back a couple months ago. It was probably like, well, maybe like 8, 10 months ago. I'm not even really sure, to be honest with you. It's been a while, you know?
I think it was actually back in March. I think it wasn't that long ago, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, it sounds like that. It just sounds right. Yeah.
Sure.
No, I've just been busy, you know what I mean? I work a lot, you know what I mean?
Totally get it.
Take care of the kids.
But like I said,
right?
Tony, like I said, we got to wrap the show up. So let's just get into the meat and potatoes of what you wanted to talk about.
No, you know, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to be friendly, you know what I mean?
I get it. But don't, even this part. Skip this part. Just go to the point.
Shit. Come on, Jimmy. You know, it is what it is. But listen, I just call you guys back to let you know that we spoke about what we spoke about. I thought about it, right? And I'm still holding the same position I used to hold. None changed.
Right. And last time you called, you said because of your personal spiritual experiences, you still are a Catholic, or you were a Catholic as a result of personal spiritual things. You don't have any way to prove any of it true. You don't have you have no evidence. You believed that it was wrong to be skeptical of faith, which is a notion that we disabused you of. You basically said, I just have personal feelings, no logical reasoning. And by the way, the reason why I know all of these things and I seem like I have an amazing memory is because we actually put your clip up this last week and I'm just reading the description of it.
Oh, yeah? It was pretty good?
Let's see how it's performing. So you've called basically to tell us that you still hold the same position, even though last time you conceded that you don't have evidence, you just have personal feelings.
You know what? The thing is, I sat down and thought about it.
Okay.
And you know what?
So do you have a better reason now to present to us than last time?
It's the same reason. And you know what? You know what? Listen. You guys have the same belief as you did back in the day. I have the same belief I have right now.
Tony.
And you know what? I have no problem with
Tony,
that.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, Matt, how you been?
Well, I'm sensible. Are you suggesting that you called in to tell us nothing's changed since last time?
To be honest with you. Just to catch up
I'm
with you
not.
guys, basically.
I don't want to catch up with you, Tony. I don't need people calling me to, cause I got shit to do. I don't need somebody calling in to tell me that, hey, I still believe the same shit I used to believe. I just figured I'd call in to let you know. I appreciate that you're a nice guy, but I'm not your friend.
We don't know each other.
And you know what?
I apologize about that.
I have friends.
You know, I apologize.
I have friends, and they don't feel the need to call me to tell me that they still believe in a God or still don't believe in a God. It's bizarre.
No, you know, if there's any hard feelings, I apologize.
You sound like you've been drinking.
You know? No, I'm just trying. You know, I saw you around, and I said, hey, you know what? Let me tell you how I feel again.
Yeah, how many drinks deep are you actually? I'd like to just ask that directly. Have you been drinking today, Tony? Because I also think you sound slurred compared to last time.
I'm on blood pressure medication.
Okay, then my apologies for saying that you sound like you've been drinking, but you do sound like you've been drinking. But here's the thing: how many times has someone? How many times?
I have a heart condition.
How many? I do too. How many times has somebody called you on the phone to tell you, "Hey, we talked about a year ago. Nothing's changed."
Many times.
Many times.
You call people to do that all the time.
Yeah.
No,
yeah. That doesn't happen to me. Cool.
People call me and say, "Hey, not enough for nothing." It's the same shit like a year ago.
Yeah. People that are friends of yours, right? Like people on shows don't call you.
No.
You do realize we're doing a show right here where people are supposed to call in to defend what they believe.
I'm not trying to disrespect.
At no point have we ever said, "Hey, call in and tell us everything's still the same."
And I apologize. I'm not trying to confront you guys. Listen, I just called in to just contact you back. Like you told me to give you a call back. And that's what I did.
Tony, all I want is if things are the same, did you call in to actually defend your position in some new way or with some new information? Did you call in to defend? Okay. Did you call in to defend?
Just check up on you guys. That's basically it.
Okay. You can check up on us as much as we need to be checked up on just by tuning in and watching.
Yeah, Tony, I'm gonna end with this.
I apologize.
No, stop talking because you keep talking. I started talking. You kept doing this. You kept interrupting. To tell you the truth, Matt might have apologized. I think you're lying and you have been drinking today because I also just listened to your voice. Your voice is noticeably different. Tony, I don't care. I don't give a fuck. Tony, if somebody calls in and we had a conversation and in that conversation they gave a bunch of concessions that they don't have evidence, and they say, by the way, I'm calling in to let you know nothing's changed, I consider that a taunt. That you're calling to be like, by the way, you might have owned my ass last time, which we did. You might have owned me, but I haven't changed a bit. Don't bother next time, Tony. Seriously, if you want to call back with your good reasons to call back with what has changed, call back with after you acknowledge that you aren't being logical, that you aren't being intellectually consistent with the ways that you've improved and changed your life. Because if when exposed to that information, you don't think I should make some changes to make sure that I actually care about what is true and what isn't, we have nothing to talk about. So think about that next time before you call in. Bye. I don't care. I dropped it. I don't care. Actually, whatever. Call me when there's something has changed. Matt was much nicer. Fuck off is what I have to say.
Well, as somebody who actually, has a heart condition and stuff, I know how. Look, my meds mess with me.
Sure.
The Ozempic that I'm on makes me burp nonstop. It is absolutely. Like if it weren't for the fact that it's keeping me alive and keeping my blood pressure down, I would absolutely stop taking this stuff. But it's doing a good job. Then I had a triple bypass. My heart's doing fine, but I don't. Put me out in the sun working, and I'm not making it more than about an hour in this 105-degree Texas heat before I got to take a break, and maybe not a full hour. And it's been 105 degrees here in Texas for like 40 days now. And if you look at the weather report, let me look up Austin weather. I think that so high today is 105, tomorrow 107, 103, 104, 108, 107, 105, 104. We're breaking new records. There's an excessive heat warning. Austin is absolutely miserable.
Yep.
And so it's more noticeable to me. And so if somebody like you were here one day, you were absolutely here when I had a health-related mental catastrophe where I wasn't able to remember names and stuff.
Sure. Yeah. I remember we were fixing your AC.
I sounded like I was drunk.
Yeah. I don't see you calling in and interrupting and not being able to get to the initial point after being guided there for 4 minutes straight. Yeah,
probably not. I'm just saying that's why I don't assume too much about Tony. But it was a funny day because it was probably a good 30, 40 minutes of sitting in the house with 3 people sitting there watching me going, is Matt going to be okay? Before everybody realized, yes, Matt's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we were worried for sure. And there was also an interesting, I've always said self-awareness is the source of misery. And there's something I actually think about that day a lot because you were aware of how far away your brain was from the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that was fascinating and somewhat terrifying to watch because I'm like, dementia runs in my family. And if I know it's happening as I get older, that's not going to be something I'm going to be willing to stick around for. I
think it's a different category. I think that, if you've got something like dementia or Alzheimer's and stuff like that, I think specifically it's hitting the part of the brain that makes it not aware. What I was suffering isn't much different from, I think I'm having heat stroke. You're kind of aware of that. And I was definitely having heat stroke and some other stuff. But anyway, you have something to go do with Aron Ra.
Yeah, we're going to go read the Book of Mormon. So come join us. It's over on Aron Ra's channel. There should be an auto direct, but if it doesn't work, you can do it that way. And I'll bet you that I fucked up today and that this is going to say nothing. It's just going to say patron producers. God damn it. Thank you to everybody who's on our top tier. We'll get this fixed by the next show and have the new list up. I forgot to get the new list imported. Thank you, everybody who is supporting us over on Patreon. That's patreon.com/calltheline. We will see you later this week for a great lineup of shows, and I will be back next Sunday with Derek from Myth Vision here on the Sunday show on The Line. Goodbye.
Oh, no, all the patron producers quit.
I just explained all that. Matt had a heat stroke again. All right, see you, everybody.